Chapter 818. Ding Meng's question was indeed answered 3 minutes later. After Wen Yang injected the 2 balls of origin energy into the formation, the entire sacred lake began to rumble and tremble, causing everyone to lose their footing. The mana of the 16 pupils around them had been weakening, but they suddenly began to operate again, and they were even growing stronger. At the same time, the pupils began to emit a strong, rotating cross-shaped light. This was the characteristic of the divine light singularity. The entire forest was lit up like a net of lasers. Ding Meng could not explain this strange phenomenon, but he was certain that there was something strange about this formation. Not only did Wen Yang's 2 balls of origin energy not serve as a seal, but they were also supplying energy to the divine light singularity. Wen Yang's expression also changed. He definitely did not expect such a strange change to occur. Suddenly, he shouted, "Brothers, hurry up and activate your origin energy. Be careful not to get caught in the crossfire." Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 6 people on the periphery of the formation began to activate their origin energy, creating shields of various colors. Ding Meng felt a great deal of pressure on his face. None of the 6 people had an origin energy index below 30 billion. The ones with the highest origin energy index were the black-robed elder and the metal-clad elder, whose origin energy index had soared to 50 billion. General Ross's origin energy index was also around 40 billion. This scene was extremely shocking. As the ripples spread and the aura dispersed, the waterfall at the edge of the cliff became smaller, and the lake water began to boil. A dense white mist began to rise between the heavens and the earth. However, in the next instant, Wen Yang flew up from the ground and into the sky. A pair of pure white wings extended from his back. They were shaped like the steel wings on Tyrell's armor. Ding Meng's eyes widened. This was actually the pure aura of the divine light singularity. An earth-shattering scene finally appeared. In the air, Wen Yang elegantly turned around. With a whoosh, a pure white cloak draped over his body, as if a king had donned his royal robe. He looked valiant, dignified, and sacred. This half-human, half-light form was still enough to intimidate people. Ding Meng had never been so shocked before. That was because Wen Yang's cloak was the legendary divine cloak, which only Mao Xing's generals had the right to own. In the information that Mio Star General had transmitted to him, it was mentioned that a complete set of Mio Star General equipment was made up of many different parts. Take Ding Meng as an example. He had a pair of gauntlets, leg guards, boots, and a spear, but he did not have a cape, a crown, or armor. A complete set of Mao Xing's equipment could create terrifying powers that could bombard stars, cross star regions, and kill interstellar experts. Now, the cloak had appeared on Wen Yang's body. The head of the Norse Empire was actually a divine light warrior. This was a huge secret. Ding Meng was completely shocked. As soon as the cloak appeared, Wen Yang used a martial arts technique that Ding Meng was familiar with. He stretched out his limbs, and his entire body shook violently in all directions. This was clearly the Overlord's mountain-crushing force. 16 beams of light shot out from the cloak and shot toward the 16 demonic eyes on the top of the holy tree. As soon as the divine light energy was released, the demonic energy was suppressed again. The demonic eyes spun rapidly and began to change color. Although Wen Yang had suppressed the demonic eyes, he still neglected the changes in the holy lake under his feet. At this time, the holy lake's color had turned black. The mirror image of the crown seemed to have been contaminated. It was actually twisting and changing. If one had carefully observed the rapids on the surface of the river, they would have discovered that the ripples on the surface of the river were intertwining and changing in an instant. It was so amazing and so terrifying that if one stared at it for too long, they would start to hallucinate. The changes in the holy lake right now were just like that. The changes in the holy lake were even more shocking than the changes in the devouring world's holy lake. Oh no! Ding Meng finally realized what was going on. He suddenly jumped down from the edge of the cliff, summoned his wings of light, and flew straight to the island in the middle of the lake. "Stop!" Ding Meng shouted. "How dare you?" The 6 people on the periphery obviously felt the sudden strong waves of energy. When they saw that it was Ding Meng flying over, they did not care. They all raised their hands and slapped toward the sky. In their minds, if anyone dared to harm their leader, they would not hesitate to destroy that person. Among the 6 people, only Ross' wall of holy brilliance was the first to fly over. This huge wall was green in color and had an irresistible force of nature. It was meant to separate Ding Meng and had no intention of attacking him. Ding Meng immediately felt the kindness of this general. He did not dodge. When he crashed into the wall, it was as if he had crashed into a bubble. He was immediately sent flying. Behind the wall of holy brilliance, 3 huge swords as thick as missiles, 2 lightning chains as big as trees, and dozens of fist-sized mirror images of the rainbow origin energy whizzed towards the sky like chaos. The vines and grasses in the sky above the forest immediately turned into a huge 7-colored mushroom cloud. It was clearly caused by the joint attack of these people. Even master like Ding Meng would not dare to take this joint attack head-on. No master in the Federal Empire would dare to take it head-on. If they did, they would be crippled even if they did not die. Ding Meng looked down. General Ross was looking up at him and giving him a look. At the same time, General Ross shook his head slightly, indicating that he should not get close. The leader was sealing the area. Anyone who got close would die. In fact, the leader had also noticed the wings of light behind Ding Meng. He was even more surprised. I did not expect you to be a martial artist of the divine light like me. You have hidden it too well. However, Ding Meng shouted anxiously, "Hurry up and stop. It can't be sealed. You are injecting energy into it. The consequences will be unthinkable." Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, the 6 people on the periphery raised their hands again, and a large forest of colorful swords rushed up like a flood, directly submerging the cliff. The whole mountain was flattened on the spot, and the sound of the explosion was earth-shattering. Ding Meng immediately jumped into the water. The moment he entered the water, his hands and feet turned cold. This was because he saw the situation under the water with his naked eyes. Crystal-carrying matrices that looked like containers sank to the bottom of the lake. These containers were black, and the surface material was exactly the same as the clothes on the old man in black. Not only could his telekinesis not scan them, but he could also not analyze them. Now, the containers opened automatically one by one, and people swam out one after another. These people were none other than the butler, the butcher, number 6, and number 2. The core members of the Hidden Front had been here for a long time. Ding Meng suddenly realized something and quickly swam upstream. This time, General Ross and the others did not attack him because they had also sensed the abnormality under the water. One by one, they unleashed all kinds of ultimate skills such as ice, fire, and thunder and smashed the water surface. The butler, the butcher, and the others were obviously not in a normal state. Their eyes were red as if they had seen their enemy. They rushed toward the shore crazily, especially the butcher. When he saw General Ross, it was as if he had seen food. He raised his hands and rushed toward him like a hungry wolf. His speed, strength, and origin energy were more than twice as high as when he had fought Ding Meng. The shore was immediately in chaos, and Ding Meng did not care about the group fighting outside. He quickly rose into the air and flew toward Wenyang. "Stop it now. This is a mutated Shenguang biotechnology transmission array. You will send the unknown creatures from another world here." It was too late for Wenyang to stop now. The 16 demonic eyes turned black in the blink of an eye, and there was a strange sound that cut through the air. This sound was extremely strange. It was like a musical score that had been disrupted. If one could describe it, it would be that this was definitely not a sound from the human world. Even the sounds of hell were not as unpleasant as this. If one heard it, they would feel an indescribable discomfort all over their body. OM, OM, OM. The 16 beams of Xinguang suddenly turned black. The demon's energy was rebounded. "Be careful," Ding Meng cried out in alarm. Wenyang crossed his arms in front of his chest, and a crown shield covered his entire body. This was clearly the Diamond Star spell. However, this was of no use at all. With a hong sound, the protective shield turned into nothingness. The Black Demon Clan's concentrated attack was reflected back, condensing into a black fog that surrounded Wen-Yang. Puff! Wen-Yang spat out a mouthful of white blood, and his entire body fell like a kite with a broken string. Fortunately, Ding Ming arrived in time. He swept past like the wind, grabbed Wen-Yang's belt, and quickly floated toward the shore. The sacred lake had finally taken shape. The mirror image of the crown had completely disappeared. It had completely transformed into a huge ghost-eyed demon eye. The teleportation portal of Xinguang biotechnology was white, but this eye embedded in the ground was a terrifying cinnabar color. Not only was the eyeball moving, but the cornea was also boiling like water. It was as if something was about to come out. Why is this happening? Wen-Yang panted, but his expression was still very calm. Ding Ming quickly explained, "This is the result of the transmission of the sacred lake in the devouring world, the spatial jump of Xinguang biotechnology, and the imprisonment of the demons." He did not have time to explain that this was all information that Star General Miao had transmitted to him. When Yang's expression froze, "Did I activate some kind of confinement device?" Ding Ming was expressionless. "I think so." At that moment, the 16 sacred trees all exploded into black smoke. Even the demonic eye had turned into a black ball of energy. All the demons' energy gathered in the center of the transmission array. After a burst of smoke floated and combined, a black figure slowly walked out of the black fog. At that moment, Ding Ming and Wen-Yang felt a chill run down their spines. This person was none other than the leader of the Hidden Front. Wen-Yang smiled bitterly. The Fifth Lord was right. After so many years, I haven't changed at all. The people on the shore were still fighting fiercely. A battle of this level was extremely intense and tragic. Ding Ming could already see that the butler, the butcher, and number 6 were lying in pools of blood. On Wen-Yang's side, there were also 3 corpses floating on the water. Only General Ross, the old man in black, and the old metal man were left. The leader of the Hidden Front slowly walked over. His footsteps were light, and his tone was even more cheerful. The Fifth Lord has always been very good at reading people. He knows that you are obstinate and self-opinionated. You don't even listen to the opinions of others. You don't even listen to the opinions of Mr. Ting. So this time you have lost. You have lost completely. Wen-Yang took a deep breath, but halfway through, he spat out another mouthful of blood. His heart sank. Almost all of his organs could no longer function. It seemed that no one could escape this time. Everyone would be buried here. Chapter 819. The fighting had stopped, and the 2 groups of people were staring at each other with swords drawn. Ding Ming suddenly said, "This is a mutated Xinguang Technologies teleportation portal. In theory, it can connect to the space-time tunnel and transport creatures from the alternate world from far away." The leader of the Hidden Front was wearing a mask, so no one could see his face. But at this moment, you could feel that he was smiling. "That's right," Ding Ming said, but the gate to the alternate world was not actually opened. Instead, it was some kind of restriction that was opened. "That's right." The leader of the Hidden Front finally laughed. Wen-Yang said in realization, "He must have tampered with this device." "Ha ha 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 ha." The leader of the Hidden Front looked up and laughed. This was the first time he had laughed so heartily. "Wen-Yang. Oh, Wen-Yang, you're really smart. Mr. Ting did not notice the problem, but you did." Wen-Yang slumped to the ground. "I felt something was wrong halfway through injecting my energy. This devouring world magic lake formation is very strange. The more I injected my energy, the more it absorbed. In the end, I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. All my energy was sucked away." The leader of the Hidden Front said leisurely, "You've always been smart. When you were studying, you were smarter than others. When you broke through, you were also smarter than others. When you entered Planet Norland, you were smarter than other political leaders. You could always think of shortcuts, find ways, and achieve your goals. The previous leaders had to work for hundreds of years before they could become leaders, but you only used a short 30 years to reach the top of the empire. But who would have thought that such a smart person like you would be so stupid in the end? A wise man's 1,000 considerations was bound to make a mistake. A fool's 1,000 considerations was bound to make a gain. For a wise man like Wen-Yang, there was bound to be a loss, and the loss was terrifying. Wen Yang could not help but ask, "How did you do it?" The leader of the hidden front laughed. "Do you want to know the truth? Unfortunately, you're not qualified because you're the loser. But I can make an exception because Mr. Ting saved your life." His words were hard to understand. It was because Ding Ming had saved Wen Yang that he was willing to tell Wen Yang the truth. Did he want Wen Yang to live to regret his recklessness? The leader of the hidden front said, "First of all, you are not wrong. The information that the grassroots empire told you many years ago is true. There is indeed a teleportation circle here, but it cannot teleport creatures from another world. Do you know why? Because the amount of energy required is too great, and it's not something our world can provide. Your little bit of divine light energy is enough to dominate the empire, but for this teleportation array, it's just a drop in the bucket." When Yang listened quietly, the leader of the hidden front said, "Actually, this teleportation circle can't be operated without the power of space-time." When Yang said, "But you still succeeded in using it." The leader of the hidden front sighed. "I didn't expect this place to work, but the grassroots empire probably didn't expect that a creature from another world had already been teleported here many centuries ago." Oh, when Yang's expression changed, Bossing Feng said, "I don't know what kind of method an expert like him used to seal this otherworldly creature here, but I know that he must have told you. If anything happens here, you'll have to reseal it." When Yang had indeed done so, the leader of the hidden front said, "Actually, no one expected this. No matter what world it came from, it had been trapped here for centuries. Without a continuous supply of energy, it had long run out of fuel." When Yang was stunned. "It died?" "No," Ding Ming suddenly said. "It must have been discovered by the boss when it was dying. Not only did the boss master the method to use this kind of energy, he might have also learned a lot from this creature." The leader of the hidden front was also surprised. He reached out his hand and said, "Please continue." Ding Ming said, "After the boss mastered the trick to using this new energy, he must have modified this teleportation circle and turned it into an energy-absorbing device. It combined the power of the Federal Empire, the Devourer's sacred lake, and the power of the demons. It's fine if you don't inject energy into it, but once you do, the energy will be sucked away." The leader of the hidden front smiled. "Please continue." Ding Ming looked around. This place shouldn't have so much energy, or at least, it shouldn't be filled with so much energy from the demons. Let me make a bold guess. The boss might have spent many years to deliberately create this environment to attract the attention of the upper echelons of the empire. The leader of the hidden front smiled. "Anything else?" "Yes." Ding Ming continued. "This new type of energy also has the characteristics of the Protoss martial arts. Not only can it absorb energy, but it can also convert it at will, turning the newly absorbed energy into its own." The Princeps was confused by the appearance when he injected energy, and by the time he realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. The Princeps could be said to have injected new energy into you, but at the same time, he was injured by his own divine energy. He injured himself. Clap, clap, clap. The leader of the hidden front applauded. "Mr. Ting, I told you at the space station that you've been traveling for a long time and have an adventurous spirit. Your mind, foresight, and knowledge are all top-notch. Look at the people around you. Which one of them can be compared to you?" Ding Ming shook his head and said, "You're wrong. Everyone here has been fooled by you, even me. You deliberately spread the information about the solitary entropy key, and this convinced the Protoss martial artists and made them want to find this place. Perhaps the Princeps hasn't been fooled by you yet, but you've been using the recreated warriors to cause trouble in the frontline war zone. The upper echelons of the Empire will definitely focus their attention on this place sooner or later, and they'll track you down here. It's just that I don't understand. You don't seem to be targeting me, but the Princeps." The leader of the hidden front said proudly, "That's right." Ding Ming frowned and said, "With your strength, methods, foresight, and intelligence, it won't be too difficult for you to deal with the Princeps. You spent at least a few decades on this plan, and you spent so much energy, effort, manpower, and money. Was it just to bring down the Princeps?" The leader of the hidden front looked at him quietly. After a long time, he said, "Mr. Ting." Ding Ming said, "Please speak." The leader of the Hidden Front said, I know you've been through a lot, and you're very powerful. You must have had the same experience before. Between life and death, how would you choose? Ding Meng said, Of course, I'll try my best to survive. The leader of the Hidden Front nodded and said, Yes, when people are faced with a choice between life and death, they'll always try their best to survive. If you want to deal with me now, how confident do you think you are? Ding Meng looked around and sighed helplessly. Don't even mention how confident I am. I don't even have a chance. The leader of the Hidden Front looked at him with admiration. That's your strength. You're very objective. You can see a lot of things that you can't see. I think you've been able to survive until today because of these strengths. Being objective and fair is the motto of the Hidden Front mercenaries for centuries. It's always been engraved in the hearts of the Hidden Front members. Ding Meng looked at him and said, You want to recruit me into the Hidden Front? Wrong. The leader of the Hidden Front said seriously. We're going to work together to build a great career. We're going to share victory and glory, and we're going to have a great future together. Ding Meng smiled coldly. I'm afraid I'm not going to be that lucky. I don't want to be your scapegoat. The leader of the Hidden Front was confused. Why do you say that? Ding Meng said, You made use of Guan Lin to detain me on the space station. It was a good move, but it was also a bad move. The leader of the Hidden Front was curious. Oh, Ding Meng said. When the Chancellor's wife boarded the space station, she immediately recognized Officer Number 10, who was codenamed Station Commander. His real name is Dai Jinsheng, and he's the commander of the Empire's border garrison. After knowing this information, I finally understood your thinking. Officer Dai's experience was tragic enough, and he was framed. You saved him at the right time so that you could get a professional like him to help you take care of things. The leader of the Hidden Front laughed. What can he take care of for me? Ding Meng said. Officer Dai was one of the earliest explorers in the Fertile Chalk system. He's familiar with the complicated environment of the Fertile Chalk system. He knows how to operate the space station in the rainforest system. Secondly, you recruited Officer Number 6, Doctor. Doctor is an expert in many fields. On the surface, you asked her to study the composition of mana here, but in reality, you asked her to constantly test the stability of this force field. The 9 core members you recruited all correspond to your overall plan. The leader of the Hidden Front did not laugh. He seemed to be deep in thought. Ding Meng looked around again. Also, I can tell that these people won't betray you. It's not because they trust you or are loyal to you, but because you knew from the beginning that they wouldn't betray you, because dead people can't reveal secrets. The leader of the Hidden Front said, I treated them with sincerity. I would never do anything to my own comrades. Ding Meng sneered and said, Of course you won't do it yourself because they have the corresponding identities, positions, and abilities. Similarly, they will have the corresponding opponents at the corresponding time, place, and time. You don't have to do it yourself at all. You can eliminate them completely to prevent future troubles. That's a very fresh point of view. The leader of the Hidden Front laughed again. Ding Meng suddenly turned to face Roth, but his hand was pointing at a fat corpse in the distance. It was the corpse of the butcher. General, you fought the most fiercely with this person just now. You definitely know his identity, don't you? Roth gritted his teeth. This person's name is Tian Nu. He has committed a heinous crime. Ding Meng asked, What heinous crime? A look of pain flashed across Roth's eyes. I have 2 sons. The younger one is your friend. The older one was recruited by me many years ago and was sent to the front line to train. Tian Nu was my subordinate for many years. Out of trust, I entrusted my older son to him, who knew that, during a mission, he made a major mistake in his judgment. The Frogman's cannon fire hit their starship, and the starship crashed into outer space. Ding Meng said, So, this Officer Tian killed your son, but he didn't die. Roth gritted his teeth even harder. He abandoned the entire ship and secretly escaped in an escape pod. Ding Meng said, The military court doesn't deal with this kind of thing. Roth said helplessly, He disappeared without a trace. No one knows where he went. Ding Meng stared at him. I'm afraid things aren't that simple. You should have hated him, but when you met just now, he seemed to hate you even more. He rushed up to you without saying anything. When I fought with him before, he didn't even have this kind of ruthlessness. Faced with Ding Ming's questioning gaze, Roth hesitated for a moment. His eyes were filled with hatred. I also found an excuse to kill his son in the Empire. His wife also committed suicide by jumping off a building. Ding Ming clapped his hands. That's right. That explains why the two of you fought each other the moment you met, and why you fought to the death. Chapter 820. On the quiet shore of the lake, everyone stood motionless. There was a momentary calm in the air, as if a storm was about to come. Ding Ming sighed. As a general, you must have used some extreme methods to kill Officer Tian's son. This is not something to be proud of. Not only was it disgraceful, but it would also become a scandal for the Empire. Ross would definitely be punished. Wen Yang looked at all of this in shock. If it weren't for Ding Ming's presence, he would never have imagined that his subordinates would have such a secretive past. Ding Ming pointed at the butler's corpse lying on the water surface. The butler had died very miserably. His chest had been pierced through by all sorts of sharp origin energy, and his entire chest had been shattered. If I didn't see wrong, you were the one who killed the butler. Ding Ming's gaze fell on the old man in black. The old man in black was as silent as a statue. He refused to answer at all. Wen Yang suddenly said, I know who this butler is. Who is she? Ding Ming asked. Wen Yang gazed at the old man in black, his tone somewhat sorrowful. Brother Yuan, why did you do this? Why did you have to kill her? The old man in black raised his head and painfully closed his eyes. Her name is Lan Ting. She was my first love. This time, it was Ding Ming's turn to be stunned. Since she was your first love, why did you kill her? The old man in black said, She and I were childhood sweethearts. When we weren't even origin ability users, we were already engaged. It wasn't until we went to Emperor Star University that she was pursued by someone else. His tone was strained, as if it was difficult for him to spit out the words. However, Ding Ming had already guessed it. She betrayed you? The old man in black said, If it was just betrayal, I wouldn't have killed her. Not only did she cheat on me, she even married that person. She got married more than once. Every time she got divorced, she would come to me, begging me for help. I practically gave her everything I had. Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, But why didn't the two of you come together? The black-clothed old man didn't seem to want to talk about the past too much. It's very simple. It's because I'm poor. I'm just a poor kid with no power or influence. She would rather be F***ed by a rich dog than let me suffer. Ding Ming was speechless. He had never experienced anything like this before, but he could feel the anger in the old man's words. If he didn't kill this bitch, it would be hard to get rid of the hatred in his heart. At the same time, he also understood Officer Yuan's mentality. Since you despise me for being poor, then I must work hard and become the most powerful person in the Empire. And he had indeed done it. Those who could walk side by side with the head of state were either generals or the heads of the parliament. Ding Ming turned around and faced the head of the hidden front again. You heard it. The core members you recruited were all targeted and purposeful, because you knew that once they encountered the head of state's experts, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. As for the rest of them, I don't think I need to ask about their origins. The head of the hidden front laughed dryly. It seems that I have to admit it. Ding Ming shook his head. That's why I said that I really don't want to be cannon fodder. If I work with a scary person like you, I'm afraid that I'll end up like Miss Guan, being sold and still helping to count the money. Wen Yang suddenly spoke in a low voice. General Luo, Brother Yuan, Mr. Zhang. Ding Ming coldly interrupted him. You don't have to shout. Wen Yang was stunned. Why? Ding Ming said, if you're hoping that the remaining 3 people can help you deal with them, you can completely give up on that thought. Wen Yang's expression was one of disbelief. With the strength of these 3 people, they could deal with any expert in the Empire. Ding Ming seemed to know what he was thinking. They won't help you. Wen Yang was shocked again. Why? Ding Ming let out a long sigh. Because I only just found out that they're not your people. They're from the hidden front. When he said this, even the head of the hidden front couldn't help but laugh. Haha, your imagination is really rich. Ding Ming's expression was dark. Among the core members of the Hidden Front, from number 1 to number 10, there are only two that I haven't seen before. They're the two in front of me. They're Officer number 3 and Officer number 4. This was really a shocking sentence. The old man in black and the old man in metal couldn't help but turn around and stare at him with sharp eyes, as if they wanted to swallow him whole. Ding Meng sighed. Boss, do you still remember the order you gave to the butler in the command center? Old 9. Boss, please give me your orders. What about Old 3 and Old 4? They're still in outer space. They won't be back anytime soon. Are they still in their original positions? Yes, Ding Meng explained. I already thought that this sentence was very hard to pronounce. It was very strange. What's strange about it? The head of the Hidden Front asked calmly. Ding Meng said seriously, you've been planning and operating for so many years. Just as you said, it's finally time to bear fruit. For such an important operation, not everyone is here. With your cautiousness and meticulousness, this shouldn't be the case. The head of the Hidden Front nodded. That makes sense, Ding Meng continued, but the butler's answer was to stay in their original positions. I thought that the normal answer would be to stay in the designated coordinates, but she didn't say the coordinates. If she said the coordinates, it means that the two officers have already been assigned to their fixed positions and are only waiting for your order. The so-called fixed positions are not where they are, but the positions they hold. The head of the Hidden Front said, Isn't that a bit far-fetched? Ding Meng pointed at the old man in black. The material of the black clothes on Officer Yuan's body is exactly the same as the outer layer of the crystal-carrying matrix underwater. Radar can't detect it, perception can't see through it, and telekinesis can't scan through it. I don't think they came from different places. Just this point alone is enough. It's hard to believe that you're not in cahoots with each other. The head of the Hidden Front did not speak again. Ding Meng felt that his expression was very ugly. Ding Meng said, Actually, it's not hard to understand your thinking if you think about it from another perspective. The Chancellor is very strong and has a lot of experts around him. It's very difficult for you to take him down. But if you plant a mole around the Chancellor, it's different. You'll be able to coordinate with him from the inside and be foolproof. This is double insurance. The old man in black clenched his teeth. Nonsense, Ding Meng sneered. You don't have to deny it anymore. Boss has been eating, drinking, and having fun on the space station for the past few days. Just from a surveillance video provided by Julie, he can confirm that the people coming from the Songqing spaceship are from the Chancellor's team. May I ask where he got his information from? How can he know the Chancellor's movements so well? The old man in black wanted to refute, but he was interrupted by the head of the Hidden Front. Brother Yuan, there's no need to argue. In front of someone like Mr. Ting, there's no point in denying it. His words undoubtedly confirmed that Ding Meng's deduction was correct once again. Wen Yang looked at everyone in disbelief. Brother Yuan, I've always treated you well. Why would you betray me and the Empire? The head of the Hidden Front took 2 steps forward. Let me answer this question for you. Brother Yuan and Elder Zhang are indeed your right-hand men. They have high positions and power, but they have never dared to go against your wishes. Let me give you an example. Brother Yuan is considered a poor man among the Empire's upper echelons. Poor man? Wen Yang frowned. He really did not understand this phrase. The head of the Hidden Front sighed. Brother Yuan's direct descendants also have some small businesses in the Empire, but they are on the verge of bankruptcy. In a few days, Brother Yuan will be honorably retiring from his position. An old man who has made great contributions to the Empire can't even solve his family's livelihood problems in his old age. Whose fault is this? Wen Yang said, Poor management. This is the result of one's own ability. Do you want to abuse your power for personal gain? The head of the Hidden Front said, I don't advocate abusing your power for personal gain, but you gave the military contract to the Fong family, the Wan family, and the Chu family. Even if you let others take the lion's share, you should at least leave some for your old friends. This is not against the principle, right? Wen Yang could not help but say, It sounds dignified, but it's actually for personal gain. The head of the Hidden Front sighed. When the water is too clear, there will be no fish. Don't you understand this principle? Wen Yang said proudly. As an upper echelon of the empire, I should set an example and be strict with myself. I should contribute to the future of the empire. How can I abuse my power for personal gain? The head of the Hidden Front asked, "Your wife is backed by the Apocalypse Group and has a huge amount of wealth. This also allows you to be like a fish in water in your official career in martial arts. Naturally, you don't have to worry about it. But what about the people around you? Some of them have to rack their brains and think of all sorts of ways to get resources for training. They can't even guarantee the basic necessities of their loved ones. Who would believe that? The head of the Norse Empire's advisor is even worse off than a normal citizen. You're elegant and awe-inspiring, but have you ever thought about them?" When Yang was speechless, he looked at the two elders and said, "You actually betrayed me over such a small matter?" The two elders were silent. They refused to answer. When Yang then looked at Ross, "What about you, General? You can't be doing this for the same reason, right?" The head of the Hidden Front said, "The General has worked hard for the Empire for many years. He could be considered one of the few meritorious deeds in the history of the Empire. However, he's only a general. You don't even give him a 3-star general's medal. Is this how the Empire treats important officials?" Ross closed his eyes. The head of the Hidden Front's words hit the nail on the head. When Yang was speechless, even someone as strong as a warlord couldn't withstand the test of fame and power. Yes, sometimes the most powerful thing in the world wasn't military strength, but power. The head of the Hidden Front sighed. Since ancient times, there have been so many powerful people. When they fell, which one of them wasn't because of a trace of carelessness? They were never defeated by a strong enemy. They were defeated by their own arrogance and stubbornness. Even now, you still don't know why you lost. You still refuse to admit your mistakes. Do you know how sad you are? When Yang finally sneered, "You speak as if you can solve these problems." The head of the Hidden Front's tone changed. "That's right. I'm here this time to solve these problems, change the chaos, establish a new order, and look forward to a new future." When Yang sneered disdainfully, "This is the funniest joke I've ever heard. You're just an underground force from outer space. You're trying to make decisions for the Empire's higher-ups. This has never happened before in the history of the Empire. It won't happen now, and it won't happen in the future. Even if I die here today, you'll still be the head of the Hidden Front. You can't change anything." The head of the Hidden Front ignored him and turned to face Ding Ming. "Mr. Ting, didn't you want to see my true face? Today, I'll fulfill your wish." Chapter 821. The Hidden Front's leader's body shook slightly. The Hidden Front's unique black outfit automatically tore apart, revealing a light gray suit and a blue-black tie. This outfit was exactly the same as Wen Yang's. Ding Ming and Wen Yang's hearts sank at the same time. The Hidden Front's leader took off the mask on his face. At the same time, he gently wiped his face with his hand. A handsome, elegant, and dignified face was exposed in the air. A huge shadow swept over. Wen Yang felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. The Hidden Front's leader's real face was Wen Yang's face. It was exactly the same. There were no flaws or differences at all. At this moment, Ding Ming finally knew what the other party was planning. They were trying to impersonate the princeps. The key was that the impersonation was flawless. Ding Ming also finally understood why he had such a strange feeling when he saw the princeps at the spaceport. He felt that this person was very friendly, but also very dangerous. Because Wen Yang was the Hidden Front's leader. The Hidden Front's leader was Wen Yang. At this moment, the Hidden Front's leader's voice had become like Wen Yang's. It was warm and magnetic. "I'm the princeps of the Norse Empire." It was as if the people around him were under a spell. They all stood still, and their silent expressions seemed to agree with what he said. Ding Ming suddenly calmed down. "This is not your real face either." He was the only one present who could recognize it, because he realized that the Hidden Front's leader's invisibility treasure had not disappeared. It had only changed his face and body to look exactly like Wen Yang. The Hidden Front's leader was still the leader of the Hidden Front, who was full of foresight and talent. The Hidden Front's leader suddenly laughed. "So what if it's my real face? What is true is false. What is false is true. What is true is false. Why do you have to be so serious about it? Life is like that. If you don't understand this principle, you will end up like the head of state. Ding Ming suddenly cupped his hands and said, I'm impressed. The leader of the Hidden Front smiled, even more happily. It's an honor to be praised by Mr. Ting. I don't dare. Ding Ming secretly activated the origin. He saw that Officer Number 2 was already standing behind the Hidden Front boss out of habit. From the beginning until now, this was the only core member of the Hidden Front that Ding Ming had never seen in person. He had a strong premonition that this person was probably the most dangerous one among the Hidden Front mercenaries. The Hidden Front boss said again, Mr. Ting. Ding Ming said, please speak. The Hidden Front boss said, honestly speaking, do you think I'm the head of state of the Norse Empire? Ding Ming was silent for a moment, then said, looking at the current situation, objectively speaking, you are. The Hidden Front boss revealed a cruel smile. The person on the ground, is he the leader of the Hidden Front? He was obviously referring to Wen Yang, but this time, Ding Ming answered without hesitation, yes. The Hidden Front boss then looked at Wen Yang and said meaningfully, see, this is the difference between you and him. He can see the reality clearly, but you can't. Wen Yang was speechless because he had nothing to say. This time he had lost. He had not only lost his life, but also his everything, including the future of the Norse Empire. Ding Ming sighed and said, the head of state of the Norse Empire went on a private expedition to the fertile chalk star system and dealt with the Hidden Front organization. In a while, he led his staff back to the spaceport and returned triumphantly. Nothing seemed to have changed. It was very smooth, very normal, and very glorious. The Hidden Front boss smiled and said, this is actually a very good opportunity for you. Ding Ming asked, what opportunity? The Hidden Front boss said, you could choose to stay here or come with me. It's up to you, and this choice shouldn't be difficult for you. Ding Ming smiled. I said before that I'm afraid of working with someone like you. The Hidden Front boss also smiled. That's only temporary. You'll soon know what kind of person I am. When the time comes, not only will you not be afraid, you'll even be proud. Ding Ming said, what if I choose to stay? The Hidden Front boss smiled and said, but you'll return to the Norse Empire sooner or later and choose to work with me. Ding Ming asked curiously, oh. The Hidden Front boss said, because you have no other choice. The Holy Grail Federation is looking for you all over the world. You're a Class A criminal. Yes. Ding Ming did not deny it. The Hidden Front boss continued, very soon, the Norse Empire will also put you on a wanted list because you're a member of the Hidden Front. Following your boss around the fertile chalk star system to commit crimes, you'll become the target of everyone in the Norse Empire. Ding Ming said, I don't mind. The Hidden Front boss revealed his cruel smile again. You don't mind, but what about your friends? What about your family? What will happen to them? Miss Yuman and her father might be implicated by you. Your good friend, Miss Chu, might be very disappointed in you. She will soon marry Roger and become part of a wealthy family. The next time she sees you, she might command her fleet to kill you. Ding Ming's face darkened. The Hidden Front boss said, you can't return to the Holy Grail Federation, and there's no place for you in the Norse Empire. Will you stay in the fertile chalk star system? Or will you go to the devouring world and seek refuge with the immortal Yuan Queen? If you really meet up with the immortal Yuan Queen, you'll become the public enemy of the entire human world. You'll never have a day of peace. Ding Ming's palms were sweating. He suddenly realized that the Hidden Front boss thought about things more thoroughly than he did. The world was so big, but there was no place for him. The Hidden Front boss said, perhaps there's another place that can take you in. What place? Ding Ming was curious. The Hidden Front boss laughed. The Fifth Lord. With his foresight and courage, you'll definitely be put in an important position. However, I know that you'll never go there. So, you'll eventually come to me when you have nowhere else to go. Ding Ming sighed. Maybe. The Hidden Front boss shook his head. This is not a maybe, it's a certainty. Before I leave, I'll leave you with one last thing. My door will always be open for you. You're welcome to come to my place anytime. As long as you're willing to come, you'll be my friend, my brother, and my most esteemed guest. You're not going to kill me? Ding Ming asked. The Hidden Front boss said, Miss Guan should have told you that my greatest strength is knowing how to use people well. You're a talent, so why should I destroy a talent like you? I won't do such an unwise thing. Ding Ming once again gained a new understanding of this person. This person was really strong. He was strong in terms of his brain and intelligence, his foresight, and his bearing. These are not things that martial arts could compare to. Moreover, his martial arts were not weak either. As for you, the hidden front boss glanced at Wen Yang, who was lying on the ground. You'll repent in pain for the rest of your life. After saying this, he turned around and left. The others followed behind him and left one by one. The island in the middle of the lake was only left with wreckage and 6 badly mutilated corpses. There were no flashes of swords, no rain of blood, and no massacre. The outcome of this battle was decided just like that. The wind blew across the sky, and the waterfall surged again. The lake was slowly filled up, and waves of mist rose from the surface of the lake. The damp mist hit Ding Ming and Wen Yang's faces. Their minds seemed to clear up a lot, but neither of them knew what the other was thinking. There was a roar in the distance, and balls of light shot up into the sky. Those were the military's more than 50 Songqing spaceships taking off. The new head of state was leading his team back in triumph. Looking at this familiar scene, Wen Yang finally spoke. "Why did you choose to stay?" Ding Ming said, "Maybe it's because we're the same kind of people." Wen Yang asked in return, "Martial artists of divine light?" Ding Ming nodded. Wen Yang smiled bitterly. "So what if I'm a martial artist of divine light? In this world, there's probably only one kind of energy that can be called true power, and that's power." Ding Ming understood how he felt. A person who had fallen from a pedestal was a blow and a setback that not everyone could bear. At least, Wen Yang could still smile. Suddenly, there was a slight fluctuation of energy in the distance. Another motorcycle flew over from the cliff. Ding Ming was surprised when he took a closer look. There was a dying person lying on the motorcycle. This person was Han Yin. As soon as the motorcycle landed, Han Yin, who was covered in blood, rushed over while clutching her stomach. The moment she saw Wen Yang, Han Yin was pleasantly surprised. "Sir, I knew it was you. I didn't expect you to still be alive." She ignored her injuries and ran over to help Wen Yang. Wen Yang was also surprised. "Why didn't you leave?" Han Yin gritted her teeth and said, "That person is an imposter." This time, even Ding Ming was surprised. "Even I couldn't tell. How did you know?" Han Yin blushed. "My sense of smell has been extraordinary since I was a child. I've been able to smell your scent almost every day for the past 7 years. I've already memorized it. When that person came back, I knew something was wrong with him. From the first day she entered the Chancellor's office in the Empire State Building, she fell in love with this charming man at first sight. Although she knew that the Chancellor was married, she couldn't stop herself from falling in love with him. Yes, there was nothing wrong with loving someone deeply. How could Wen Yang not feel it? However, he was the Chancellor. His every word and action represented the Norse Empire. He couldn't accept it, but he couldn't stop it either. Wen Yang suddenly raised one hand and spat out a white mist toward Han Yin. The wound on Han Yin's stomach healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Han Yin's beautiful eyes turned red. "Sir, you're injured so badly, but you're giving your precious healing energy to me?" Wen Yang sighed. "It's been hard on you, Yin." This was the first time he had called her that. "Han." Yin almost cried. Ding Ming suddenly asked, "Where's Mr. Han?" Han Yin's eyes turned even redder. Brother Ling was executed by that fake chancellor. Ding Ming nodded. As expected, Wen Yang looked at her. "But you survived?" Han Yin smiled bitterly and shook her head. "The commanding officer of the 05 Division was my classmate. He only cut me once and didn't hit any vital parts. They all thought I was dead." Wen Yang sighed. "That's a blessing in disguise." Han Yin looked up at him. "Sir, didn't you survive as well?" Wen Yang smiled bitterly. "Do you really think the hidden front spared my life?" Han Yin was stunned. "Isn't it?" Chapter 822. The sky was still foggy and dim. Wen Yang looked at the dim sky and sighed. It's not that he didn't want to kill me, but that he didn't want to. Han Yin couldn't understand what he meant, but Ding Ming understood. Yes, it was not that the boss of the hidden front didn't want to kill Wen Yang, but that there was no need to kill Wen Yang. He had already gotten everything he wanted from Wen Yang. His power, his power, his staff, his subordinates, and even his wife. When Yang being alive was equivalent to being dead, such a person could no longer attract his attention and could not pose a threat to him. He even needed Wen Yang to be alive. Just like what he said, he wanted Wen Yang to be in pain and repent for the rest of his life. One of the most terrible things in the world was to live in pain, but not have the courage to die. Ding Meng looked at Han Yin. I might have misunderstood you. Han Yin was a little surprised. Oh, Ding Meng said, I always thought you were a hypocrite. I was wrong. You are a very loyal person. Han Yin's face was a little hot. She was too embarrassed to say those words, but Ding Meng quickly said, now the whole world has abandoned him. Only you choose to believe in him without hesitation. Maybe you thought he was dead, but you still drag your injured body to find him. Even if he is dead, you still want to find his body, right? Han Yin smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, Mr. Ding Meng. I'm not as great as you say. Ding Meng said calmly. Some women look very rigid and arrogant, but they are actually very persistent and loyal. When Yang turned his head and looked at Ding Meng quietly, there was an indescribable gratitude in his eyes, because he knew that Ding Meng was encouraging him. When you've lost everything and the whole world has abandoned you, but there's still a woman who believes in you unconditionally and follows you. Not every man has the chance to experience this feeling. When Yang felt something stirring in his heart, he remembered many years ago when he was still young. He had to hand out leaflets on the streets of his hometown under the scorching sun. After a day of hard work, he only received a meager reward in exchange for nutrient solutions. However, he firmly believed that one day he would stand out and be in high spirits. You must have a lot of friends, right? When Yang looked at Ding Meng smiled faintly. I don't have many friends of the same sex, but I do have a lot of friends of the opposite sex, and all of them adore me. With his personality, it was very difficult for him to make such a joke, but when Yang smiled happily. Under such circumstances, the two of them could still smile. Only the power of friendship could do that. At this moment, in their hearts, they both saw each other as friends. However, it was also because Han Yin was beside them that the two of them tacitly did not bring up the topic of the Mao Xing civilization and Xinguang technology. Even if Han Yin was not present, the two of them would probably not touch on such confidential matters. You're a very interesting person, When Yang said with a smile. Ding Meng smiled and said, if I were interesting, I wouldn't have come here and fallen for the Hidden Front's trap. When Yang said, I'm also very curious why the boss of the Hidden Front didn't do anything to you. Han Yin decisively interjected, yes, the two of you survived. In the future, you'll definitely be able to expose his schemes. Ding Meng and Wen Yang smiled bitterly at the same time. Han Yin was puzzled. Sir, what's with that expression? Wen Yang smiled bitterly. If I go back and announce to everyone that I'm the ruler of the Norland Empire, how do you think the public will view me? Han Yin was puzzled. But you're really the ruler of the Norse Empire. Many people have seen you on the screen. Don't tell me they don't believe you? Wen Yang laughed self-deprecatingly. I think the biggest possibility is that I'll appear on the headlines of the entertainment news. The headline will be some mental patient came out to ride on the popularity of the ruler. Han Yin was stunned. Ding Meng sighed. Miss Han, this boss of the Hidden Front is not an ordinary person. If he dares to do such a terrible thing, he must have prepared a backup plan to ensure that no one will be able to see any clues. Actually, I still feel that there are many suspicious points about this matter from beginning to end. When Yang said, I'd like to hear your opinion. Your opinion is very important. Ding Meng smiled. Why do you suddenly care so much about other people's opinions? When Yang said seriously, the Fifth Lord and the Hidden Front are both right. I've been too arrogant. On the surface, I seem to listen to other people's opinions, but in reality, I have my own ideas. I don't want to repeat the same mistake. Besides, a friend's opinion is definitely worth considering. Ding Meng nodded. First of all, I feel that there are many aspects of this conspiracy that don't make sense. His goal is to replace you as the ruler. If that's the case, he doesn't have to use this method at all. He can use the most honorable method to enter the political or military world, participate in elections, or achieve military exploits. You should know that the hidden front is very rich, and he himself is very powerful. I believe you can see all this." Wen Yang nodded. "That's right," Ding Meng said. "Of course, this method is the simplest, but also the most time-consuming. I can understand that he can't afford to wait. If he really wants to deal with you, with the power he has at his disposal, he can carry out an assassination." Han Yin refuted. "That's impossible. The Empire's ruler's security is very tight. No one can assassinate the ruler. Besides, even if you're killed, he won't get the position of ruler." Ding Meng said, "I'm just assuming. Even if this method of assassination is stupid, it's not as risky and complicated as impersonating someone." Han Yin said, "That's true." Ding Meng said, "Why don't we sort out the process of his operation and see how difficult it is? First, he has to know that the mutated portal of this world is located on Rainforest Planet number 5. If he finds out about this by chance, it'll be the simplest step. Next, he has to find the 9 core members. I estimate that it'll take him more than half a century to do so." Wen Yang's expression was serious. "Just finding the right people is a very taxing task," Ding Meng said. "After completing the first 2 steps, financial resources will be a big problem. Miss Guan's situation is probably unique. The hidden front subordinates must have many hidden channels to continue the blood transfusion. Otherwise, the basic maintenance of the space station wouldn't be guaranteed." Wen Yang was indeed a smart person. "His most important step is to lure me out of the Empire's territory. Only then will he have a theoretical chance of succeeding." Ding Meng said, "The demon's power is a good bait, but you're the Empire's ruler. Naturally, you won't take some groundless rumors to heart." Wen Yang said, "But the war zone's recreated warriors are constantly expanding their influence. This is something I can't ignore." Ding Meng said, "That's why you came here personally. Furthermore, you can't come here openly. If the frogmen find out about this, your trip will be much more dangerous, and his plan will most likely be ruined." Wen Yang sighed. "Actually, the most difficult part is for him to face me directly. He might not be able to beat me in a one-on-one fight." Ding Meng said, "This kind of person is all about confidence. If he doesn't have full confidence, he won't make a move. Only when he has absolute confidence will he make a move. Strictly speaking, he didn't even move a finger, and he won this battle. And it was a beautiful victory. To be honest, if I were his accomplice, I would applaud him." Han Yin felt a chill run down her spine. She had followed Wen Yang for many years in the political arena, but those tricks were like elementary school children playing yo-yos in front of the Hidden Front's boss. Ding Meng said, "The method he chose was the most complicated, difficult, and thankless path. Why did he do it? What's his motive?" Wen Yang's eyes flashed coldly. "His goal is not as simple as just replacing the head of the Empire." Ding Meng said, "Then I have to ask you, who are your enemies? Who are your opponents? Who are your competitors?" Han Yin smiled bitterly. "Mister's enemies are as numerous as the hairs on a cow. There is no need to explain this. In order to become the highest ruling official of the Empire, one had to go through countless battles, bloodshed, political games, and unpredictable situations. However, in order to become the highest ruling official of the Empire, most of these opponents had either died or been injured. Some of them had to stop, and some of them had to retire." Wen Yang said, thoughtfully, "From a political point of view, I have no opponents or enemies in the Empire during my term." Han Yin explained, "If Mister has a biggest enemy, it would be the Frogmen's commander-in-chief. That guy absolutely hates Mister." This was the truth. Ding Meng also knew that Wen Yang's political philosophy was to fight against the enemy with all his might. In the past half a century, the Frogmen had not gained any substantial advantage over the Empire. But the chances of the commander-in-chief being the head of the Hidden Front were too low. It was so low that it was almost impossible. The head of the Hidden Front was obviously someone who understood the rules of the human world. Even if a treasure like the Thousand Shadow Centipede could turn you from a frog into a human, the risk was too great. The success rate was too low. No matter how selfish the black-robed elder and the metal-clad elder were, they would not cooperate with the frogmen. Wouldn't they be pushing themselves into a pit of fire? When Yang's expression showed that he was deep in thought. What you mean is that there is someone who hates me very much. His identity cannot be revealed, and at the same time, he wants to take away my position and everything I have. That's why he's been plotting for so many years. Ding Ming said, that's pretty much what I mean. But he might not be your opponent or powerful enemy. He might be hiding in the dark, or you might have overlooked him or forgotten him. You might not be able to see him for the time being. When Yang said, now that you mention it, I think of someone. This person's characteristics are very similar to his. Ding Ming and Han Yin both said in surprise, who is this person? When Yang's expression was a little absent-minded. His gaze seemed to be far away, as if he was reminiscing about the past. Chapter 823. When Yang suddenly said, Little Yin, you should know that I completed my entrance examination on the Star of the Empire. At the mention of this, Han Yin immediately revealed a proud expression. She puffed out her chest and said, Of course I know. Mister, you studied at the Emperor Star University and are the most dazzling student there. In the history of the Empire, there were 7 emperors who graduated from the Emperor Star, and your achievements are widely spread. Many young martial artists view you as a role model and encourage them. When Yang smiled, there's something you don't know. On the first day, I entered the Emperor Star. After paying my tuition, I was so poor that I couldn't even afford a box of nutrient fluids. Han Yin was shocked. How is that possible? When Yang smiled, the media always deliberately exaggerates things. Actually, I came from a humble background. When I was at my poorest, I helped people tow boats, carry bags, cut grass, herded cows, distributed flyers, and picked up trash. In my hometown, as long as I could earn money, I would do almost anything. Han Yin puffed out her chest again. This is what I admire about Mister. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth, but you managed to accomplish great things. When Yang shook his head, at that time, the entire Federal Empire's economy and technology were still underdeveloped. After I entered the school, I was arranged to live in a 2-person dormitory. The room was very small, and there was only a simple first-generation sensor cabin. There wasn't even a bathroom. My roommate was a senior who was 2 years older than me. He was a very outstanding student who also came from a humble background and came from a remote primary star system. His name was Lin Fei. 2 students from humble backgrounds who came from a poor area in a remote solar system of the Norse Empire naturally had the same topics and goals, and that was to work hard, stand out among their peers, and strive to achieve great things in the future. When Yang said, Senior Lin was not only very outstanding, but also very enthusiastic and cheerful. He was the most talented student in the eyes of the instructors. That year, he was only 24 years old, but he had already stepped into the ranks of the Origin War Sovereign. There were faint signs of him breaking through to the combat master level. He suddenly looked at Ding Ming and said, You graduated from the Starlight Academy of the Federation. If you had already come into contact with the divine light energy at that time, then Senior Lin's talent would probably be comparable to yours, right? Ding Ming had no choice but to admit, indeed, with this kind of talent, he must have inherited the greatest expectations of the school's instructors, right? When Yang said, He's a good person, I was greatly influenced by him in the early stages of my cultivation. I also received a lot of favors and help from him. Even today, I'm still grateful to him and see him as the benefactor of my life. If I had cultivated peacefully like this, there wouldn't have been so many problems later on. When he said that, Ding Ming and Li Tianlan knew that something was going to go wrong. When Yang's thoughts drifted back to that sunny afternoon, an expensive and luxurious flying car slowly descended at the southern gate of the Emperor Star University. That day, he and Lin Feng were chatting and laughing as they returned from outside the university, and they just happened to witness this scene. The car doors slowly opened, and a tall and beautiful girl with a pure appearance stepped out of the car. She was so pure that any boy who saw her would be moved. She was like the purest treasure in the world, so pure that she was like a peerless painting, without any impurities. The blue sky and white clouds, the sun shining brightly, her dress fluttering in the wind, her silhouette picturesque. This was such a beautiful scene. When Yang said word by word, "This girl is Zhong Yalan," Han Yin said in realization, "It's rumored that you and Madam met on the Emperor's Star." I didn't expect it to be true. When Yang shook his head and said, "I did know her, but at that time, we were only acquaintances. We didn't have any interactions." Han Yin asked curiously why. When Yang smiled bitterly, "I'm just a poor student with a little bit of talent. She and I belong to two different worlds, and it's impossible for us to have any interactions. I know this very well." Ding Meng said leisurely, "I'm afraid that senior of yours doesn't think the same as you." When Yang nodded, "I admit that Yalan left a deep impression on me. She's the flower of the Emperor's Star, the goddess of many male students' dreams." Han Yin smiled. "When Madam was on the Emperor's Star, many people knew of her. Even I've heard of her." When Yang continued, "That afternoon, when we returned to the dormitory, Senior was especially excited. He asked around for information on Yalan and even searched the school's internal network. For the first time, he made an exception and didn't use the induction cabin to cultivate in the afternoon. This proved that Lin Fei had become Zhong Yalan's loyal admirer. I believe it was love at first sight. I also believe that there's such a thing as love at first sight in this world." When Yang nodded affirmatively, his expression was very sincere. "Because I can't see it. Then did he go after Madam?" Han Yin was a woman after all. She was most interested in gossip about relationships. When Yang's eyes flashed with hope, "He didn't just go after her. That evening, he went out. I don't know where he got the oldest pen and paper, but he actually wrote a love letter of more than 3,000 words. Even I was impressed by his literary talent. Then, under his pleading, I sent this love letter to Yalan's dormitory that very night." Han Yin also seemed to be excited. What was the result? Needless to say, he was mercilessly rejected. Ding Meng, the iron-willed man, began to spoil the fun. When Yang revealed a trace of a smile, the rejection was indeed rejected, but it wasn't a heartless rejection. Oh, Ding Meng's interest was piqued. Could it be that he was mercilessly rejected? When Yang smiled, "Yalan was actually quite interesting when she was young. She made me wait outside the dormitory for a few hours. She also wrote a letter using pen and paper, tactfully rejecting Senior's kindness. I've read that letter, and it's just as amazing." Han Yan's face was full of envy. Madam comes from a prestigious family. Naturally, she's very cultured. Rejecting in the same way is the most polite way. Ding Meng, the alloy demon king, began again. "This seems like a very good rejection, but I'm afraid there's a problem." When Yang continued, "I brought the letter back to the dormitory. After reading it, Senior didn't feel disappointed or upset. Instead, he jumped and laughed happily. He flipped the letter over and over again, and even lay on his bed to smell it. It was as if he treated it like a treasure, afraid that he would touch it." Han Yin was stunned. "Is there anyone who likes it that much?" Wen Yang said, "The next day, he went out again. He wanted to look for her, but he couldn't find her. He really couldn't bear to tell Han Yin these details. Yalan was the apple of the Apocalypse Group's eye. When she went out, she was driven by luxurious cars and escorts. Senior was a poor boy who couldn't even afford a flying motorcycle. Why did he have to look for her? He didn't even have the right to look for her. The only thing he could do was to go to the south gate of the school every day after class to watch her go in and out of the school." When Yang said, "In the first 3 months, whether it was rain or wind, or whether it was school, he would always be there on time. His only purpose was to see Yalan." Ding Ming couldn't understand this kind of thing, but Han Yin sighed. She could understand Senior's feelings. The unforgettable first love, all those seemingly absurd and childish actions, were now so familiar and beautiful when she recalled them. He picked her up every day, so naturally he attracted her attention. When Yang couldn't help but sigh, until one day Yalan got out of the car and rejected him. Yalan's reason was very simple. She didn't like him, but he didn't feel bad. In fact, he was even happier. Why? The iron-willed straight man asked again. Because Senior felt that Yalan finally talked to him. This was something to be happy about. When Yang smiled, from that day onwards, he actively participated in all kinds of activities and asked about Yalan's preferences. He attended balls, hunts, competitions, and martial arts competitions. His purpose was to attract Yalin's attention. Ding Meng and Han Yin listened quietly. He is indeed an amazing person. He is able to understand everything with just a little bit of guidance. Moreover, he is very skilled and proficient. He has indeed successfully attracted Yalin's attention. He is the kind of person that no one can underestimate. Wen Yang calmly recounted. That year, during the school's preliminary assessment, he was first, Yalin was second, and I was third. Although Yalin still rejected him, she didn't dislike him. Han Yin sighed. He was very infatuated. Ding Meng was expressionless. But this wasn't a good thing. Wen Yang nodded. The results of the preliminary assessment changed the direction of things. It was at that time that Senior decided to exchange all his credits in the school system. Han Yin asked, "What did he exchange for?" Wen Yang said, he knew that Yalin liked to collect ancient weapons and rare treasures, so he exchanged for the most expensive item in the system, the Star Moon Peak Staff. This is a very unpopular hidden weapon. Of course, it doesn't seem like a rare treasure today, but it was already very good at the time. He spent 3 years of his academic credits. You have to know that he is a very frugal person. He can't bear to spend money on food. But that time, during the end-of-term makeup dance party, he went on stage to sing in front of everyone and confessed his love for her. At the same time, he also gave her this gift. The scene was very warm and touching. Han Yin asked, "Did Madam accept him?" Wen Yang shook his head. Yalin still rejected him and made it clear that it was impossible. Although Yalin knew that he was sincere, she still didn't accept him. Han Yin sighed. She seemed to feel that it was a pity. Wen Yang said, "Yalin didn't want to embarrass him in front of everyone, so she asked me to return the gift." That night in the dormitory, when he saw the returned gift, he wasn't happy for the first time. He drank a lot by himself. That was the first time I saw him drink. He has a habit of drinking plain water, but that night he passed out drunk. Ding Meng's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't this the habit of the Hidden Front's boss? It was only this time that he made an exception and drank some fruit wine before the mission. Han Yin showed a sympathetic expression. "It must be very sad, right?" Wen Yang nodded. "Yes, almost everyone, including me and Yalin's roommates, thought that Yalin would accept him, but she didn't. The truth is that cruel." Chapter 824. Wen Yang said, after that incident, he started to change. He started behaving strangely. Sometimes he would mumble to himself. Sometimes he would turn on his screen and stare at Yalin's picture, grinning like an idiot. He was always muddle-headed and crazy. How pitiful. Han Yin sighed. Ding Meng glanced at her. If this person was really the boss of the Hidden Front, you wouldn't think he was pitiful. You would think he was terrifying. Once a man who had suffered emotional devastation for a long time had a mental breakdown, he would do crazy things. Wen Yang said, this state of his directly affected his studies. The instructors began to notice this and try to persuade him patiently, but he refused to listen. Ding Meng sighed. I'm afraid his talent is going to go to waste. Wen Yang said, yes, his martial arts began to show a precipitous decline. Actually, it wasn't a decline, but a stagnation. Studying on the Imperial planet was like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't advance, you'll fall behind. The other students quickly caught up. There was a time when I was sent to outer space to train. When I came back, I found that his ranking had fallen from first place to below 2,000. Ding Meng couldn't help but ask, did he not wake up at this time? Wen Yang said, he won't wake up. I heard from others that he placed roses and candles on the lawn outside Yalin's dormitory several times and knelt on the ground to confess his love. It caused a sensation in the entire school. Han Yin said, that's not wise. Wen Yang said, this matter alarmed the school and Yalin's family. The Apocalypse Group's representatives came to the Imperial planet and began to negotiate with the school's higher-ups. They requested a deal with him. Han Yin couldn't help but ask why. He didn't hurt anyone. Why do they have to deal with him? Wen Yang glanced at her. Many of his actions are very ridiculous. After he was rejected, he didn't dare to confess anymore. Instead, he secretly followed her. Wherever she went, he followed her like a shadow. He was everywhere, like a ghost. Although he didn't do anything, she was afraid. Hanyin couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. If it were me, I would be scared too. When Yang said, I heard that there were a few times when he couldn't hold it in anymore. He rushed up from behind and hugged her, insisting that Yalan be his girlfriend. However, he was pulled away by the other students and school guards. Do you think that the Apocalypse group will put a lot of pressure on the school? Ding Ming sighed. He's already possessed. When Yang said, his mentor cherished his talent and begged the school for mercy. He promised to restrain him personally. Only then did the Apocalypse group let him go. He wasn't expelled, but his range of activities was restricted. Hanyin also smelled something bad. But he's not willing to give up, is he? When Yang said, I remember when the tutor came to our dormitory, he tried his best to persuade him. Can you guess how he answered? Hanyin asked, how did he answer? When Yang said, he said that his name is Lin Fei. Yalan's father is Lin Fei. Even their names are the same. This is the will of the heavens. He is destined to be the son-in-law of the Zhong family. He must have Yalan. Han Yin sighed. He's really gone mad. When Yang said, something even bigger happened in the last year of the Imperial planet. After the annual stage evaluation, there was a routine gathering. He somehow got a bottle of magic apple, which is a strange poison that can devour worlds. Han Yin didn't know what it was, but Ding Ming had experienced it before. It was an aphrodisiac. He and Isendale were poisoned because of it. When Yang said, he put the poison in Yalan's drink without anyone noticing. It almost caused a disaster. If not for the fact that Yalan's bodyguards were knowledgeable and discovered it in time, it might have led to a tragedy. Han Yin couldn't help but say, he's not in love anymore. He's possessed. It's not my place to comment on seniors' feelings. When Yang turned to look at Ding Ming, what do you think? Ding Ming sighed. Someone like me isn't qualified to comment. When Yang said, with such a thing happening, he can forget about graduating. He'll be taken away by the guards. Han Yin said, and then? When Yang said, he attempted rape, and the target was the beloved daughter of the Apocalypse group. The Imperial Court won't let him off easily. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Ding Ming also felt that it was a pity. Those 3 years are the golden age of origin energy cultivators. After he comes out, he'll probably disappear into the crowd. When Yang said, that's right. He was expelled from the Imperial planet long ago. He was in a trance one day and ended up on the streets, begging for money. I went to see him a few times and gave him some money, but his mind was no longer normal. He kept mumbling Yalan's name. He's gone crazy from love, Han Yin sighed. I didn't expect a genius like him to fall to such a state because of love. When Yang said, after that, I lost track of him. It was as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. I asked people to look for him everywhere and even checked on the space station, but I couldn't find any records of him entering or leaving the country. Ding Ming pondered and said, but that doesn't explain why he hates you so much. No. When Yang corrected him, I did very well in my final exams. After I graduated, I joined the military and came to the front line of the Wakeo star system. After I made some contributions, I returned to the Empire and took up a post in the Congress. Han Yan's eyes lit up. That's right. I remember that you were the rising star of the Empire at that time. The Congress's Democratic Progressive Party thought very highly of you. When Yang said, most importantly, the party I belonged to was heavily sponsored by the Apocalypse group. It was also from then on that I started to interact more with Yalan because of our work. I started to pursue her. Han Yin revealed an envious expression. That was a good story at that time. When Yang laughed softly. It wasn't a good story, but I had grown up at that time. You should understand, these words were directed at Ding Ming. Of course, Ding Ming understood that when Yang must have come into contact with Xinguang technologies during this period. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. With his status and position, he naturally gained confidence. He was no longer that poor student, but a rising star who was the center of attention. When Yang laughed self-deprecatingly. Actually, I've always been very popular with women. Yalan agreed very quickly. Han Yin was puzzled. Senior pursued her bitterly, but she didn't agree. But sir, the moment you pursued her, she agreed. This when Yang sighed. I pursued her not because I really liked her. She wasn't my type. Then what type do you like? Han Yin swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. When Yang said, I pursued her because I had my eye on Apocalypse Group's background and power. I needed a powerful and reputable financial group to support me in the political arena. Ding Ming continued, and she was willing to agree because Apocalypse Group had its eye on your potential and career. When Yang nodded, this was a low-risk investment for both of us, but the returns were huge. Han Yin couldn't help but say, but you don't like Madam? When Yang said, you can say that. I actually don't love her. This is different from what you see in public. Han Yin also nodded. The head of state and his wife attended many important events in the empire, and they often appeared very loving. But in fact, there was a private rumor that the head of state and his wife had been married for many years without having any children. Many politicians suspected that the two of them were abnormal in some way. When Yang suddenly sighed, many great achievements require you to sacrifice something else. Han Yin understood. In order to become the head of state, Wen Yang had sacrificed his love. You couldn't have your cake and eat it too. If you wanted to have supreme power, then you had to give up your love. On the other hand, if you chose to love the person you loved, then the position of head of state would probably not be yours. Han Yin sighed. From a life perspective, sometimes women were much happier than men. At least you had a choice. You could choose to love someone or someone who loved you. But most of the time, men had no choice. Once they set foot on this path, they had to grit their teeth and continue down it. When Yang looked at Ding Ming, how suspicious do you think this senior of mine is? Ding Ming slowly said, at least 80% suspicious. When Yang said, is that so? Ding Ming said, when he disappeared, he must have come into contact with the hidden front. Also, you said that he was mentally unstable. From the perspective of demons, he has been dominated by negative emotions such as obsession, hatred, and pain. He is most suitable to be transformed into a warrior of demons. Isn't the leader of the hidden front a demon master? When Yang sighed, I really don't want this person to be him. Ding Ming said, but it's very likely to be him. Think about it from another perspective and you'll understand. If I were your senior, what will my ultimate goal be? When Yang said, naturally, it would be Yalan. Ding Ming said, if he killed you, not only would your wife hate him even more, she would also hate him. If he became the chancellor through normal means, your wife would also ignore him. But if he became you, the situation would be completely different. His goal would be this. If I may ask, how does your wife feel about you? When Yang sighed, although I don't like her from the bottom of my heart, Yalan is very affectionate to me. If there's a flaw, it would be that after I became the chancellor, her temper became worse by the day. Ding Ming said, I'm afraid this senior of yours is the boss of the hidden front. It's a bit of a stretch to say that, but I'm almost certain that he's impersonating you. What he really wants is your wife. Not only does he want her body, but he also wants her heart. He's better than you to begin with, so what you can do, he should do better than you. So his conspiracy this time is to take back everything he's lost over the years. When Yang looked at Ding Ming in disbelief, you don't have any evidence to prove that Senior Lin Fei is him, do you? Ding Ming sighed. Not at the moment. But no matter how flawless his plan is, sooner or later, we'll find some clues. There's no such thing as a perfect conspiracy in this world. It's just that we can't find any loopholes in it for now. When Yang's eyes flashed coldly, I don't care who he is. I'll dig him out sooner or later. Chapter 825. Ding Ming pondered for a moment and said, actually, I still have some questions. When Yang said, go ahead, Ding Ming said, I just have a vague feeling that the hidden front could not have done this alone. After all, they're an underground force. I believe that they have their own channels of information, but for a big shot like you, it is impossible for them to know so much secret information so precisely. For example, you're a warrior of divine light. I believe that only a handful of people know this secret. How could the hidden front know this? When Yang fell in a deep thought, Ding Ming continued, also, Lord Grassroots Empire contacted you and asked you to guard this teleportation portal. The hidden front seemed to have received the news in advance. That person seemed to know that you would inject energy into the portal as soon as you arrived. How could he be so confident? Don't these details deserve careful consideration? Wen Yang said in a low voice. Based on my past experience, there is no such thing as betrayal or defection in this world. All the abnormalities are nothing more than the exchange of interests. Ding Ming's eyes suddenly fell on the distant horizon. You are right this time. Following his gaze, 2 stars appeared in the sky over the spaceport. They were 2 carrier starships without any markings. Obviously, someone had come to planet number 5. When Yang said, "Take a guess." "Who is it?" Ding Ming smiled. "If I'm not wrong, it is my old rival. Because this explains why Julie would inexplicably break into Rainforest Planet number 5, and why she landed at such a perfect time." When Yang said, "The Black Handprint never does business that loses money. The overall plan of the Hidden Front must have been leaked to him by the 5th Lord." Ding Ming said, "As an exchange of interests, the Hidden Front will definitely keep the 2 of us here. This is the real reason why he did not kill us." When Yang took a deep breath. "But if we want to leave this place, I think we will have to borrow the power of the Black Handprint." Ding Ming asked curiously, "You are a warrior of divine light. Are you sure the 5th Lord won't do anything to you?" "He won't." Wen Yang's tone was very certain. Ding Ming was even more curious. "Why?" Wen Yang explained. "Do you know why the Grassroots Empire did not kill the 5th Lord but sealed him?" Ding Ming asked. "What is the reason?" Wen Yang said, "The 5th Lord has a good reputation. As far as I know, he has never forced others to do things against their will, and he will never change the will of others. He is completely different from the boss of the Hidden Front. I believe him." Ding Ming did not say anything. Wen Yang turned his head again and looked at him quietly. "But at the same time, I also believe you, even though this is the first time we have met." Ding Ming asked why. Wen Yang said seriously, "I have heard many things about you. What left the deepest impression on me was not how you single-handedly killed a large group of masters from the Starbow organization. Instead, it was when you were still a war venerable. For the sake of a group of refugees you did not know, you went to a pirate planet alone and went on a killing spree to avenge those refugees. If I had been young, I would not have been able to do such a thing. Just based on this, you are worthy of my trust, not because you are also a warrior of divine light." Ding Ming also stared at him. "You are indeed an extraordinary person." Hearing such words from a master like Ding Ming, Han Yan's face was filled with pride. She looked even prouder than when he was praising herself. When Yang said, "Maybe in a while, we will have to part ways." Ding Ming said, "I hope there will be a day when we can meet again." When Yang said sternly, "I can guarantee you that the situation today will not be the same as it is on that day. You shouldn't promise me that." Ding Ming pointed to Han Yan. "You should promise her that you will rise again one day, and that it will be in the near future." Han Yan blushed a little, but she was grateful to Ding Ming from the bottom of her heart. When Yang smiled, "If we drag this on for too long, I will bring shame to the warriors of divine light." Ding Ming said indifferently, "I just hope that when we meet again, we will not have to fight." The flying car released from the carrier quickly headed toward the island in the middle of the lake. After the flying car landed and came to a stop, the door opened, and Julie, who was dressed in a professional dress, walked over in high spirits, swaying her waist in a flirtatious manner. She did not wait for Ding Ming to speak. She spoke first. "Are you two okay?" When Yang glanced at Ding Ming, he thought to himself that this guy was really good at predicting things. Whatever he said came true. Ding Ming suddenly smiled. "Why do I feel so uneasy every time you appear? It was like this when we were in Black Gold Base, and it is still the same when we are on planet number 5. Julie took off her aviator sunglasses, revealing her beautiful and cold face. She smiled sweetly. "Maybe you miss me too much, so you always want to see me." Ding Ming replied calmly. "Did you prepare a big gift for me this time?" As Julie walked closer, a strong fragrance wafted toward him. Ding Ming was not used to this, because in his impression, Julie was not a woman who liked to use strong perfume. Julie smiled. "Ding Ming, now I have to respect you and call you Mr. Ting. If you move a finger, I will have to lie down." I don't want to die a second time at your hands. That feeling is too horrible. Ding Meng was also smiling, but his smile was a little cold. If I really want to move a finger, maybe it won't be difficult. Julie smiled confidently. With your intelligence and wit, it is impossible for you to make a move at this time. As she spoke, she turned on her wristband, and the same old screen appeared. In the depths of the vast universe, a strange alien fleet was quietly sailing. These starships were completely different from the Empire's starships. Although they looked different and varied, they all had one common characteristic, which was that they were similar to frogs. There were all kinds of frogs: mutated frogs, bloated frogs, thin frogs, flattened frogs, rounded frogs, and the outer layer of the starships seemed to be made of a strange material that glowed with a green light. Everyone present was no stranger to this. This was the Frogman's starship. Julie raised a finger. 24 hours. You still have 24 hours. Hanyan could not help but ask. What do you mean? Julie said seriously. In 24 hours, the Frogman's Interstellar Fleet 202, behind the Fertile Chalk system, will arrive here. The commander is Haim Mu, and he is the commander of the army. Wen Yang and Han Yan's expressions immediately froze. A starship led by the commander of an army was not inferior to a fleet commanded by a general of the Empire. It was obvious that they were coming for the head of state. If Wen Yang really fell into the hands of the Frogmen, it would be an epic disaster for the Norse Empire. Ding Meng stared at her. Were you the one who spread this news to the Frogmen? Julie smiled and said, I'm sure you and Mr. Wen know who leaked it. Ding Meng did not believe her ambiguous answer, but Wen Yang knew that this was definitely the work of the leader of the Hidden Front. Not only did he want you to lose everything, but he also wanted you to be imprisoned forever. What a vicious move. Ding Meng sneered. Don't tell me that you're here to help us? Julie generated a new screen, and on it was the same unique black handprint. I was ordered to come here because my father wants to talk to the two of you. After that, the Fifth Lord's old voice came from the screen again. Old friend, are you well? Wen Yang calmed down. I'm fine, I'm not dead yet. The Fifth Lord also seemed to be relieved. It's a blessing in disguise. What you lose is what you gain. Wen Yang suddenly said, Thank you. The Fifth Lord asked why. Wen Yang said, You were right to remind me before. I should have immediately turned around and left this troublesome place. The Fifth Lord said leisurely, But you can't go back now. Wen Yang nodded. Yes, I can't go back now. But that's only for now. It might not be the case in the future. The Fifth Lord said, Very well. It seems that you are still the ruler of the Empire. No one can replace you. He paused and said, Ding Meng, my young friend, you seem to have suffered an unexpected calamity this time. Ding Meng said, Why do you say that? The Fifth Lord said, The Hidden Front wants to deal with the ruler, but you are involved. Ding Meng was expressionless. But the Fifth Lord's target is me. It is not a coincidence that I am involved. The Fifth Lord seemed to be silent. The Hidden Front is far more complicated than you think. If all problems can be solved purely by force, then there is no such thing as a problem in this world. You have grown faster than I thought, and I am very happy about that. Ding Meng pondered. Were you the one who leaked our identities to the leader of the Hidden Front? Yes. The Fifth Lord did not deny it. Ding Meng said, Mr. Wen's current situation is actually not of much help to you. These words were actually hinting that Wen Yang, a martial artist of the Divine Light, was already seriously injured. If the demons wanted to take advantage of the situation, then it would be a life-or-death situation. The Fifth Lord said, I'm afraid you have misunderstood me. Ding Meng said, Oh. The Fifth Lord said, Do you think that I have always been the spokesperson of the demons? That I have always been targeting the Protoss? Ding Meng said, Is that not the case? The Fifth Lord said, Ding Meng, my young friend, let me ask you. Let's take our main star system as an example. Do you know how many branches the Protoss, demons, and shifters have? Where do they come from? How many Protoss are there in the Protoss faction that you represent? Are they like you, searching for the legendary map of the Holy Temple or the Silent Entropy Land? Is the Silent Entropy Land a true treasure trove? Have you thought about these questions before? It would be a lie to say that Ding Meng was not surprised. He did not expect the Fifth Lord to know more secret information than himself and Little Rascal. Ding Ming asked curiously, "Do you know?" The Fifth Lord said, "I'm not completely sure. This is what the Grassroots Empire told me." Ding Ming was surprised. "She told you all this?" The Fifth Lord's tone suddenly became sad. "An old friend has passed away. I only recently learned that Her Excellency the Grassroots Empire passed away many years ago." Ding Ming murmured and sighed. "You are quite amazing to be able to find out about this." Fifth Lord said, "She and I are both enemies and friends, and we respect each other. If there's one thing I regret, it would be that her life is too short. If she had a long life as an origin ability user, she definitely wouldn't be in this situation today." Chapter 826. Ding Ming asked, "What's the situation now?" The Fifth Lord said, "The current situation is disadvantageous to everyone. Two martial artists of divine light are stranded in outer space. You can no longer return to the Federal Empire. There are strong enemies in front and pursuers behind. If you're not careful, you'll be doomed," Ding Ming said coldly. "So you want to meet us?" The Fifth Lord said, "I'd like to invite the two of you to my abode as guests. What do you think?" Wen Yang suddenly said, "I'll do it." The Fifth Lord said, "You're most welcome." Wen Yang turned to Ding Ming and said, "But he can't come." The Fifth Lord was surprised. "Why?" Wen Yang looked at Ding Ming with a strange look in his eyes. "He still has to return to the Empire for me to search for clues, find the real culprit, and restore order." Ding Ming looked at Wen Yang. He already understood what Wen Yang meant. If he really went to the Black Handprint's lair, as a martial artist of divine light, he would be doomed. No matter how good the Fifth Lord's reputation was, nothing good would happen on this trip. Wen Yang was seriously injured and knew that his chances were slim. He was willing to give up his chance of survival and let Ding Ming complete the mission for him. Sure enough, Wen Yang waved his hand as he spoke. A black cloak flew out of his hand and covered Ding Ming. As soon as the cloak came into contact with Ding Ming, it immediately merged with Ding Ming. There were no clues at all. However, at this moment, a large amount of information flowed into Ding Ming's mind. Ding Ming looked at Wen Yang with eyes full of gratitude. Wen Yang had given him his most precious divine light cloak. This was the greatest trust he had in him. The Fifth Lord said thoughtfully, "You seem to trust him a lot?" Wen Yang smiled faintly. "I don't trust him as a person. I trust his strength. With his strength, he could do many things that I can't." The Fifth Lord smiled. "This is indeed your usual style. Good. I look forward to meeting you." At this moment, the communication was cut off and the screen disappeared. Julie politely reached out to Wen Yang. "Please get in." Han Yin immediately said, "I want to go too." Julie looked at her and said, "Miss Han, please too." Watching Wen Yang and Han Yin walk towards the flying car, Julie said to Ding Ming, "I've brought 2 transport ships with me this time. We'll use one ourselves and leave the other for you. Of course, it'll be difficult to return to the Empire with the power of the transport ship. The space station in the hidden front is still there. You can use the Songqing spaceship to return." Ding Ming said, "Thanks." Julie said meaningfully, "My father and I don't mean you any harm, but I still want to say this. Be careful on your way back. I wish you a safe journey." The flying car quickly soared into the clouds. There was already a transport ship in the spaceport. Ding Ming slowly walked back to the spaceport. He realized that Julie was telling the truth. There was not a single person on the remaining transport ship. The command center was empty, and the control panel showed that the starship was operating freely. This meant that Ding Ming could control the starship and leave. Ding Ming now had 2 paths in front of him. The first was to return to the Empire, but this was a dead end. The boss of the Hidden Front was not to be trifled with. If he said it, he would definitely do it. Ding Ming might have already become a high-ranking fugitive in the Empire. The other path was to fly into the vast outer space, but this path was a slow death. It was unknown whether he could fly out of the fertile chalk system. There were many powerful forces in outer space, as well as powerful enemies like the Frogman Army and the Steel Main Empire Rangers. But no matter which path he chose, Ding Ming still had one more thing to do. He had promised to fly back to the Hidden Front space station and leave with Guanlin. On the apron of the space station's docking port, a brand-new Sanqing spaceship was parked there. The connecting cabin was open, and the escalator had been lowered. The spaceship was obviously waiting for someone to take off, but the person under the escalator would never be able to get up. On the empty ground, the doctor lay quietly in a pool of blood. Her eyes were wide open, as if she had seen something terrible. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, as if she was asking before she died, "Why did you kill a defenseless girl like me?" There was a small, bloody hole in the center of the doctor's forehead. The inside of her skull was completely shattered. Even if Ding Ming had a godly skill like the spirit summoning spell, he could not save the doctor. Even if he could, she would be crippled. To the doctor, it was better to die than to live in a vegetative state. Sometimes, death was a form of release for the weak. Ding Ming slowly squatted down, took off his jacket, and gently covered the doctor's body. He closed her eyes. This result did not surprise him. Along the way, he had encountered people from the Mao Xing civilization and Xinguang technology. Which one of them had escaped this fate? But he still felt an inexplicable anger because the doctor's eyes before she died were exactly the same as his current state of mind. She was just a person who liked to do academic research. In this place, she had almost no combat power. She was defenseless. She just wanted to live. What did she do wrong? Why did you kill her? Ding Ming's eyes were filled with anger. He slowly got up and walked toward the city center. He spread out his telekinesis vision and quickly realized that something was wrong. Then, he spread his body and flew directly towards the top floor of the hotel. The room was still the same room, and the person was still the same person. Just a few days ago, Guanlin had accompanied him to spend a passionate night here. But now, there was no passion in the room. Guanlin was lying on the bed. Her clothes were disheveled, and the parts that should not be exposed were all exposed. Her right calf had been cut off by a sharp weapon, and her hands were fixed to the edge of the bed by energy chains. Her hands were gripping the bed sheets tightly. It was obvious that she was desperately resisting something. When he got closer to take a look, Ding Ming realized that there were countless wounds all over her body. These are not fatal wounds. They were just some light cuts. It was obvious that someone had deliberately vented their anger on her body. Her lower body had been repeatedly stabbed by an unknown object. It was completely bloody and unbearable to look at. Guanlin's origin energy had completely dissipated. Her pupils were dilated, and white foam kept flowing out of her mouth. Her body kept convulsing. She only had one last breath left. Ding Ming rushed forward. "Miss Guan, I'm back. Wake up. I'm Ding Ming." The name Ding Ming seemed to have some kind of magic. Guanlin actually regained a bit of consciousness. She suddenly smiled bitterly. I've been waiting for you." Her beautiful face was also scratched. Her face was like a bloody mask from hell. Ding Ming felt touched. He immediately grabbed her hand. "Miss Guan, hang in there." The moment he grabbed hold of her hand, Ding Ming's heart sank. Guanlin's heart was exactly the same as the doctor's brain. She had suffered a destructive shock, and her heart had been shattered into pieces. It was a miracle that she was still alive. Perhaps it was because of her trust in Ding Ming and her deep longing for her distant mother that she had managed to hang on until now. The moment she saw Ding Ming, Guanlin's tears fell. "I ugly right now, a little." Although Ding Ming said this, Guanlin did not feel sad. Instead, she laughed and cried because what she heard was the truth. Ding Ming had not lied to her. He had kept his promise and come back to pick her up. However, she would never be able to leave. "He destroyed me." Guanlin's body convulsed even more violently. More and more white foam came out of her mouth. Her life force was gradually weakening. At this moment, the two of them had the same thought. Ding Ming understood what she meant. She was originally a carefree girl from a wealthy family. She lived a life of luxury and planned her own future. However, she was accidentally dragged into this mess and was captured to the Hidden Front base. Since then, her life had changed. The leader of the Hidden Front had not only destroyed her body, face, and life. He had also destroyed her life and destroyed her last hope for the future. She was trying her best to hang on. Was she waiting to give Ding Ming a final explanation? Ding Ming clenched his fists. He said seriously, "I will definitely avenge you." Previously, Wen Yang had entrusted him with the opportunity to live. If that was just an excuse, then this time, he was really going to return to the Empire to settle the score with the leader of the Hidden Front. Hearing this promise, Guanlin showed a sad expression. If only I had known you earlier, I would have pursued you and become your wife and make breakfast for you every day. But I hate it so much. Ding Ming's eyes also turned red. He understood this kind of regret in life. When one fell into darkness at the end of one's life, only then would one encounter the beauty of one's imagination. Even if there was an afterlife, what was the point of this affection? Ding Ming looked at her. "Miss Guan, don't worry. I will bring you back." Guanlin smiled again. Her face even regained some color. Ding Ming knew that this was the final radiance of the setting sun. Can I call you mister?" Guanlin's eyes had a trace of pleading. "Of course." Ding Ming looked at her. Guanlin stared at him. "Mister, please tell my mother. Just say that I will always love her. I will definitely tell her." Ding Ming's eyes were burning with anger. Guanlin's body convulsed violently. Then she completely collapsed and did not move anymore. Ding Ming slowly put her on the bed. Watching this beautiful woman die so painfully, his heart could not calm down. Although he did not have a deep relationship with Guanlin, the familiar feeling of helplessness came back again. They had said that they would leave together, but in the end he was still the only one left. Many images of people appeared in front of his eyes. The little girl and the protector who had been frozen into ice sculptures in the world of ice and snow. Uncle Niu, who had been swallowed by the raging mountain fire. Brother Zhongming, who had resolutely walked to the Tian family. Yu Xingyang, who had been blown into ashes by the spring wind. Xiao Si, who had died miserably in the tunnel of the black. Gold base. Suddenly, he twisted his wrist, and a light-colored original flame spurted out from his palm. Guanlin on the bed was immediately burned by the flame and turned into a pile of white powder. Ding Ming took out a small crystal bottle. With a little force from his eyes, Guanlin's ashes were put into the bottle. He would definitely keep his promise. He would bring her back to reunite with her family. Chapter 827. After dealing with Guanlin's body, Ding Ming left the hotel and walked slowly to the command center. The control panels were all lit up, and there was a person operating the control panel next to the main control panel. When Ding Ming walked in, the person immediately looked surprised. "Are you surprised that I'm the one who returned?" Ding Ming said calmly. The instructor had always been calm and leisurely. "Mr. Ting, congratulations on being alive." Ding Ming said coldly. "If I'm still alive, you're going to be in trouble." The instructor asked curiously, "Oh, what do you mean?" Ding Ming said, "You've done well. I didn't suspect you at first. You fooled almost everyone." The instructor's expression did not change. "It seems that I've underestimated you. I didn't expect you to survive on Planet 5. Ding Ming looked at him coldly. "Did you think that in exchange for benefits, Julie had taken me away to meet the Fifth Lord, General Gong?" The instructor could not help but sigh when he heard these three words. "How did you know?" Ding Ming said, "You probably didn't know that Miss Guan once saw a blurry image of you in the Imperial Planet's Hall of Fame. She's one of the few people who saw it." Indeed, the instructor did not know about this. Not everyone could predict every single detail. As the old saying goes, even a wise man would make a mistake after 1,000 considerations. Ding Ming said, "You were the most famous general in the Empire, but you did such a terrible thing." Gong Ping sighed slightly. "I've stopped being a general of the Empire a long time ago." Ding Ming said, "Could it be that your evil deeds of adultery with your brother and sister-in-law and raping and killing children were all true?" "It's not true," Gong Ping replied calmly. Ding Ming asked curiously, "Oh?" Gong Ping left the control panel and paced around the hall with his hands behind his back. Those things of the past were all fake. Before Wen Yang became the head of state, The head of state before him and his team set a trap for me in order to run for the position. It caused my reputation to be ruined. Ding Ming stared at him fiercely. You don't look like you're lying. Gong Ping smiled. Haven't you noticed since the first day you came here that everything I said to you was true? Ding Ming nodded. From boss number 1 to commander number 10, you left the deepest impression on me. Gong Ping smiled and said, oh, tell me, what part of me left the deepest impression on you? Ding Ming said in a low voice, you're too calm. Sometimes you're so calm that it feels abnormal. Your words and actions, your bearing, and your knowledge are qualitatively different from the others. You don't seem like the 8th Corps member. I've always suspected that the real boss of the Hidden Front is not number 1. It's very likely that it's either you or number 2. Gong Ping asked, why do you think so? Ding Ming said, there were 10 people from number 1 to number 10. Now, they're either dead or gone. Their endings have been predetermined from the beginning. You're the only one left. Do you think that's normal? Gong Ping smiled gently. If that's the only reason, do you think it's convincing? Ding Ming said, then we might as well use the method of elimination to confirm it. Gong Ping said, I'm all ears. Ding Ming said, let's talk about the station master first. You predicted that the Chancellor's wife and her subordinates would kill him. He's the first person to die. Then it's the butcher, the butler, and number 6. They'll definitely be killed by General Ross. Then there's the doctor, number 4, number 3, number 2, and number 1. I'm not sure about number 2's situation, but number 3 and number 4 are the biggest problems. Gong Ping narrowed his eyes. What problems could they have? Ding Ming said in a low voice, let's assume that number 1's real identity is the Chancellor's classmate. However, this classmate has disappeared for many years. Number 3 and number 4 are the Chancellor's right-hand men. Why would they trust a cripple who disappeared for many years? Why would they betray the Chancellor? Do you think this makes sense? Gong Ping said in a low voice, it does make a little sense. Ding Ming said, the only explanation is that the person who persuaded them to participate in this mission is also a famous and important person. At least, this person is someone whom number 3 and number 4 can trust. Your illustrious past is the reason why they trust you. This is not something that number 1 can do. Among the 10 people, you're the most likely. Gong Ping sighed. The 2 of them are my old buddies. We've gone through fire and water together on the battlefield. It's the kind of friendship where 3 people would share a steam bun. This was a showdown. It was useless for anyone to pretend or argue in front of Ding Ming. Ding Ming said, why are you doing this? Gong Ping asked, if you were me, I'm afraid you'd do the same. Ding Ming was a little surprised. Oh, Gong Ping said calmly, that was a century ago. At that time, I was in my prime as a general. I was the most popular candidate for the position of Chancellor. If nothing unexpected happened, I would have been the Chancellor of that term. This was because no one in the Empire could compare to me in terms of military exploits. I was the one who defeated the Frogmen, and I was also the one who signed the ceasefire agreement with the Federation. Ding Ming said in deep thought, you've made such great contributions. Indeed, no one can compare to you. Gong Ping said, but there will always be some people with ulterior motives who don't want me to be the Chancellor. Ding Ming said, even if they don't want you to be the Chancellor, there's no need to frame you, right? Gong Ping said, you're wrong. They will definitely frame me. Ding Ming said, what's the reasoning behind this? It's very simple. For words, political proposition. Gong Ping explained, every Chancellor of the Empire has their own governing principles and political goals before they take office. They have to convince the Parliament before they can take office. Ding Ming frowned. Then what's your proposition? Gong Ping said, tear up the agreement and unify the Federation. Even though Ding Ming was mentally prepared, he could not help but be shocked. You're quite ambitious. This is not ambition, Gong Ping replied calmly. This is planning for a rainy day, foresight, and true knowledge. Ding Ming said, this is the first time I've heard something like this. Gong Ping walked to a control panel and reached out to press on one of the panels. Anyone who hears this for the first time will have the same expression as you. It sounds a little exaggerated, but someone like you should understand the logic behind it. Our Holy Splendor star system is not peaceful. The Devourer world and the Frogmen are a serious threat to our human world. They are our greatest enemies, and the conflict between them will never be resolved. Dingming also agreed with this statement. The Norse Empire, the Frogmen, the Holy Grail Federation, and the Devourer world were all mortal enemies. So, in the end, either we will be destroyed, or they will be destroyed. Gong Ping's expression was terrifyingly calm. But it is very difficult to destroy them with the power of a single country. For example, the Norse Empire has been fighting with the Frogmen for almost 300 years. You can say that the Frogmen have not gained any advantage, but they reproduce at an alarming rate, and their scale of expansion far exceeds that of the Empire. Recently, the Iron Mane Empire has come in to mess things up. It is hard to say who will win. On the other hand, the Empire seems to have the upper hand everywhere. But has the Empire really conquered the fertile chalk star system? If this continues, both sides will suffer in the end, and it may even be the result of a great loss. Dingming nodded. Although he had never thought about such things, he had to admit that the other party's analysis was very reasonable. Gong Ping continued. The situation on the Federation's side is the same. 100 years ago, the war in the Devourer world was a bloodbath. On the surface, it looked like neither side had gained any advantage, but 100 years have passed, and the Devourer world has not dared to take even half a step into the lightning pool known as Lat. Since when did the Holy Grail Federation dare to attack the Devourer world? Dingming said, I understand. You mean that once the Federal Empire is unified, with the combined power of the two countries in the human world, they can easily destroy any one of the Frogmen in the Devourer world. Exactly. Gong Ping was shocked. Then, we will be able to unify and prosper like never before. You're crazy. Dingming looked at him in shock. No civilization or race can be destroyed just because you say so. Gong Ping said indifferently, I'm not crazy. I just need a suitable opportunity to succeed in such a big matter. Dingming said, Have you found the right time? Gong Ping said, 100 years ago, during the war in the Devourer world, I represented the Empire and signed a ceasefire agreement with the Federation. It was because I knew that there would be no winner in this war. After the war, the Federation's forces would wither, and its national strength would be depleted. It was the best time for the Empire to make a move. Once the Devourer world is unified, the end of the Frogmen will come. Dingming said, That is a good idea, but do you think the Frogmen are idiots? Once they see your internal strife, they might join forces to counterattack. When that happens, it will be hard to say who will be the one to destroy who. Gong Ping said, I have also thought about this problem. However, as long as the Federal Empire's large corporations support us, even if the Frogmen and the Devourer world join forces, I am confident that I can beat them into a sieve. Dingming nodded coldly. Yes, when that time comes, you will be the undisputed #1 person in human history. You will achieve the greatest feat and become the most dazzling ruler. You will be the most respected person in history, and you will become a legend. Gong Ping stared at him. A man naturally has to make a name for himself. Dingming nodded and said, However, I'm afraid those super corporations aren't stupid. You're making them bleed for nothing. Moreover, the price is extremely high. Let alone them. I'm afraid you'll bury the entire empire. You're not gambling with your life, but the fate of the empire. I'm sure many people will object to this. Gong Ping said, You are wrong. Most of the important people in the political, military, and parliament back then came from the battlefield. They knew the importance of war, and my support was very high. Chapter 828. Dingming looked at him coldly. I believe that you have a high support rate, but I believe that Apocalypse, Chuang Yu, Beidou, and the other financial groups do not support you. If I were them, I would also try my best to bring you down. I would never let an ambitious person like you become the chancellor of the empire. Gong Ping said disdainfully, These businessmen only know how to chase after fame and fortune. How would they know about the fate of the world and the rise and fall of the country? Ding Ming said, "It seems that you were framed for a reason." Gong Ping's eyes flashed, and they were full of coldness. "I respect and love my elder brother very much, and I treat my sister-in-law very well. How could they come up with the idea of having an affair with my elder brother and a sister-in-law?" Ding Ming said, "What about raping and killing children?" Gong Ping looked into the distance, as if he was reminiscing about the past. "Those children on the front line and the border were all taken back by me one by one in the war. I have always been the one who sponsored them to be raised by the hospital in the war zone. They actually raped and killed these children and pushed the blame to me." Ding Ming said, "Perhaps this is the only way to banish you from the empire forever." Gong Ping said, "If this strategic plan of mine fails, do you know who will benefit the most?" Ding Ming said hesitantly, "The Chuanyu of the empire?" Gong Ping said, "That's right. Chuanyu's old CEO, Xian Qing, loved money as much as his life, and Chuanyu's wealth was so huge that it made one's hair stand on end. I only found out many years later that the old CEO of Chuanyu Corporation was secretly supporting the frame-up. The party he supports is also my enemy. Now, many clues could be explained. Guan Lin said that his relatives loved money as much as their lives, and it was true." Ding Ming said, "So you asked someone to kidnap Miss Guan, holding Chuanyu hostage to provide blood for the Hidden Front?" Gong Ping said indifferently, "Wasn't Guan Xinqing so opposed to my strategic plan? Then let the Chuanyu bleed a little." Ding Ming said, "Not only did you kidnap Miss Guan, but you also had sex with her, infused her with mana, brainwashed her, and made her your tool." Gong Ping said, "Compared to what Chuanyu did to me, I think I'm still considered very merciful." Ding Ming sneered and said, "If Guan Xinqing knew that the strong enemy he had been scheming to deal with had become his son-in-law, he wouldn't know whether to cry or laugh." "Shut up." Gong Ping suddenly became furious. Ding Ming was startled. This person had suddenly lost his composure. Was there something else going on? Ding Ming said calmly, "It's a pity that Miss Guan is now dead." Gong Ping glared at him. "It's all your fault." Ding Ming was surprised. "I'm the one who caused it?" Gong Ping's eyes also seemed to be filled with anger. "If you hadn't sullied her, would she have ended up like this?" Ding Ming said, "I don't think I'm the one who sullied her, am I?" Gong Ping suddenly calmed down and changed the topic. "My biggest mistake was that I shouldn't have let her be in charge of delivering the samples. She was very unlucky to have run into you. But this was also an opportunity. With your arrival, I was able to ask the Fifth Lord for help." Ding Ming sighed and said, "It seems that the two of you did have an exchange of benefits." Gong Ping said, "The Fifth Lord agreed to tell me about Wan Yang's situation. In exchange, he also agreed to spare a Protoss warrior for me." Ding Ming probed, "Number one didn't kill Wan Yang and me down there. Does that mean that the Black Handprint wants to take me away?" Gong Ping said, "You've become very famous in recent years and rose to prominence very quickly. The Black Handprint is indeed very interested in you." Ding Ming said, "Then what about Wan Yang?" Gong Ping said, "He should have returned from Planet 5 by now and appeared here. But I don't know what happened down there that made you return." Ding Ming understood. Gong Ping had originally planned to kill Wan Yang at the space station. With the Hidden Front's methods and style, how could they let the real Empire's Chancellor live? Only with Wan Yang's death and Ding Ming's capture would all the truth be destroyed. Gong Ping said, "But it's better that you do it. I can avenge Guan Lin." "Avenge?" Ding Ming could not help but laugh. "Are you mistaken? I'm the one who should avenge her." Gong Ping's eyes flashed coldly. "She was originally my woman. Only I can enjoy her. A few nights ago, I was a little worried that she would betray me after entering your room and bed. I didn't expect that she would really betray me. But for the sake of the big picture, I had to hold back." Ding Ming stared at him. "You seem to like her a lot. You even arranged for her to be Planet 50? Gong Ping's expression was cold. "That's not something you should worry about. In short, no one is allowed to touch my woman. Otherwise, I'll kill them all." Ding Ming let out a long sigh. "After I left, you humiliated her in every possible way. Your methods were so cruel. If you hadn't gone overboard, I wouldn't have thought that you were the real boss of the Hidden Front. Gong Ping said, "Is there a difference between yes and no?" Ding Meng said, "No, you're not necessarily the real boss of the Hidden Front. You were expelled by the Empire and drifted in outer space. If the Hidden Front hadn't rescued you, you wouldn't have been able to gain so much power in such a short period of time. You might even have been just a chess piece." Gong Ping said angrily, "Go on." Ding Meng sighed. "Now, those who should die are dead, and those who should leave have left. There's still one person who's missing." Gong Ping said, "The Chancellor's wife, Zhong Yalan." Ding Meng said unhurriedly, "When I went down, I asked the doctor to bring the madam with him to ensure his safety. However, I neglected you. You've been hiding in the dark, waiting for me to go to Planet 5. During this time, you killed the doctor because you couldn't let the doctor take the madam away. Once the doctor returned to the Empire, he might reveal your secret. If I'm not wrong, the madam was sent away by someone else you arranged. That person called Elder Chung, who was with Wen Yang, is obviously in cahoots with you." Gong Ping sighed. "You're really smart. People who are too smart usually don't live long." Ding Meng said, "I just checked. The factory that reproduces soldiers hasn't been shut down. It's still operating normally. That Elder Chung is indeed in cahoots with you. Your plan is flawless." Gong Ping said, "But you still saw through it." Ding Meng said, "If you don't admit it, I can't do anything to you. You've created such a huge conspiracy, but your current identity is still that of an instructor, not the head of the Empire." Gong Ping waved his hand. "You're wrong again. Today, I've taken back everything I've lost. From today onwards, in the Norse Empire, whoever I want to die will die. Whether it's an individual or a force, all the power to kill is back in my hands. I sympathized with you a little earlier, but now I realize that I've been overthinking. You're a complete madman." Ding Meng shook his head and sighed. "People like the doctor and Miss Guan shouldn't have died. You can't even let go of people who have almost no resistance. If the Federal Empire is really unified, and a tyrant like you is the head of the Empire, I dare say that before the Devourer world and the Frogman attack, you'll kill countless innocent people. The Empire will have no future at all." Gong Ping said coldly, "It's not up to you to judge the future of the Empire." Ding Meng sneered. "It's also not up to you to decide the future of the Empire. You're just a narrow-minded layman. Do you really like Guanlin?" Gong Ping's eyes were spitting fire. This was his biggest secret, and it had been seen through by Ding Meng. He originally had no interest in Chuang Yu's daughter. When he was a general, he had seen countless beautiful women, but he only had one wife. She was his classmate in the army, and also his first love. When they were young, his wife, who was a medic, was unfortunately captured by the Frogmen on the battlefield. In the end, she was brutally dismembered. After that, he never married again and never mentioned anything about relationships between men and women. It was because of this that he was promoted to a general smoothly. In fact, in the political arena of the Empire, anyone with a brain would be able to see that the crime of having an affair with his sister-in-law and raping and killing a child could be pinned on anyone, but he was the least likely. However, this was how political interests worked. It would not change according to one's will. Later on, he joined the Hidden Front. The Chuang Yu's daughter was almost the same as his dead wife. Other than the difference in appearance, they were the same in all other aspects. They were both daughters of rich and powerful families, and they were both positive and optimistic women who loved their ideals. There was a period of time when he even had the illusion that Guanlin was his dead wife who had been resurrected. Therefore, he secretly took her. Not only did he help her level up, he even gave her a certain degree of freedom, allowing her to do whatever she wanted. In fact, there were many beautiful women who had been taken by the Hidden Front, but most of them were secretly executed by him. The reason was simple. He thought that those women were dirty. It was not their first time, and the one that Guanlin gave him was her first time. Who knew that Ding Meng would suddenly barge in and give him a surprise? He specifically asked for Guanlin to accompany him. In order to make the whole plan go smoothly, he endured it. Therefore, as soon as Ding Meng left, he immediately tortured Guanlin to death. Not only did he repeatedly torture Guanlin, he even broke her limbs and cut off all the skin on her body. He did not even let go of her most private parts. This kind of selfish and perverted mentality was simply unimaginable. At this time, Ding Meng sneered even more coldly. I was right, wasn't I? Miss Guan is only in her 50s or 60s, but you're an old monster who has lived for hundreds or even hundreds of years. If you didn't inject her with the mana to brainwash her, she wouldn't have fallen for an old man like you. You have low self-esteem, jealousy, and fear. I'm afraid that you're not good enough in certain areas. You're worried that she'll follow me, so you tortured her to vent your anger. With such a twisted mentality, do you think you're qualified to be the head of the empire? Gong Ping took a deep breath. He also knew that this was the old trick that the experienced people like to play. They were deliberately provoking you, but he really could not help it. Finish your story, Ding Meng said coldly. Other than this, you're just playing the role of a clown in this plan. You didn't even dare to show your face from the beginning to the end. You didn't even have the guts to go down to Planet 5. Of course, you can say that you're the mastermind behind all this, and you don't have to do it yourself. But my understanding is that you're a poisonous snake hiding in the dark. Once you meet a tiger or an eagle, the snake will be a snake. You're delusional enough to want to be the head of the empire and rule the world. I think you're still dreaming. Gong Ping gritted his teeth and said, Ding Meng, if I let you die a quick death today, then I'm sorry. Ding Meng's eyes also emitted a cold light. Today, let me seek justice for those teachers and doctors who died unjustly. Chapter 829. The atmosphere suddenly quieted down. Only Ding Meng and Gong Ping were left in the command center, staring at each other across space. The two of them stood there quietly, staring at each other like the radar scanning on a starship. As long as the other was distracted for even the slightest moment, he would be immediately caught. Suddenly, a new screen appeared on the main control console, and the system sounded. Warning, warning, all members please pay attention. All members, this station has entered automatic destruction mode. The estimated time is 30 minutes and 30 seconds. All units, please evacuate immediately. All units, please evacuate immediately. I repeat, all members, please pay attention. Ding Meng secretly cursed himself for being careless. Previously, Gong Ping had casually pressed a button on the control console, so the self-destruction mode must have been activated. He had long planned to kill Wen Yang here and escape with the starship, destroying all evidence. Sure enough, Gong Ping sneered. There is one last Songqing starship on the tarmac, but only one of us can leave. At this moment, the red light in the command center flashed wildly, and the alarm was triggered. But when the red light suddenly lit up, Gong Ping's eyelids slightly blinked. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ding Meng made his move. Under the red light, the Ding-style karate knife was like a twisted red light, and it went straight for Gong Ping's head like lightning. Bang! The two huge forces collided, and the air was suddenly distorted and then exploded. Ding Meng and Gong Ping were both forced to retreat. When they were both standing still, Ding Meng was slightly surprised. Not only was his karate knife blocked, but he also felt that this person was very similar to himself. It was the kind of toughness that had been tempered to be impervious to fire and water, and invulnerable to swords and spears. Gong Ping's expression also changed. Good job, kid. In the entire Federal Empire, there are not many people who can fight me. You are quite ruthless. He suddenly waved his hands in front of his chest a few times, and it felt like a palm technique similar to Tai Chi Xingyi. Then, with a sudden push, a ball of gray energy in the shape of a probing head flew over like a cannonball. Ding Meng's expression froze. He had already sensed the terrifying energy fluctuation. It was simply indescribable. It looked like a mirror image of a cannonball, but in Ding Meng's eyes, it was like a raging wave hitting a reef. There was no way to dodge it. Phew! Ding Meng struck out with his palms, which glowed brightly. He was determined to meet the attack head-on with the diamond star fusing art. Pah! The sharp tip of the probe drilled into Ding Meng's palm. The bottom of Ding Meng's boots immediately released a ring of strong wind. The control panel and the surrounding area immediately turned into a sea of fire. However, the probe did not explode or shatter. Instead, it pushed Ding Ming backward into the main passage. This ball of energy was the strongest attack Ding Ming had encountered since becoming an Origin ability user. Not only was it a fusion of multiple Origin essences, but it was also imbued with kinetic telekinesis, which gave the probe an unstoppable thrust. It was like a starship's booster. It would be very difficult to intercept it head-on. After sliding into the main passage, the probe's energy changed again. It directly transformed into ice Origin energy. Ding Ming's arms were covered in a thin layer of ice at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, Gong Ping descended from the sky behind Ding Ming and aimed a palm strike at the top of Ding Ming's head. Ding Ming withdrew his palms, leaned back, and kicked out with his right foot, which struck the opponent's palm. The probe flew straight out of the long main passage and into the middle of the city. A long street was instantly set ablaze, and all kinds of buildings were slowly melting. Pong, 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 pong. The two of them flew out of the main passage at the same time. In the blink of an eye, dozens of punches and palms were exchanged in midair. The explosions caused the air to constantly tremble. With them as the center, a huge gust of colorful Origin energy swirled around them. Everything in its path was crushed to dust. A battle of this level was destructive in nature. Even if the self-destruct mode was not activated, the entire space station would be destroyed in the long run. With a bang, the two of them exchanged a palm strike in midair. Borrowing the force of the collision, they flew in opposite directions. Ding Ming landed on the railing of the hotel's top floor, while Gong Ping landed on a crystal plate in the opposite building. Both of their expressions were quite ugly because they had just realized that they had underestimated each other. This instructor had hidden himself too deeply. Ding Ming had actually misjudged him. In terms of basic strength, Ding Ming dared to say that this Gong Ping's foundation was even deeper than Wen Yang's. This person had at least 200 years of bitter training from the Origin ability user stage to the War God level. If one were to use conventional martial arts techniques and methods, it would be impossible to injure him. Gong Ping was also carefully sizing up Ding Ming. He also found it hard to believe that this young man, who was not even 40 years old, actually possessed such terrifying strength. From what he could tell, this Ding Ming was like a bottomless pit. No one knew what his trump cards were or where his limits were. He was the type of person who was unfathomable. Ding Ming activated his telekinesis vision. He saw that Gong Ping's body was already suffused with a black aura. Gong Ping had indeed used his demon energy. With a clang, Ding Ming's bracers turned into divine light spikes. His entire arm turned into a white Qilin arm. Gong Ping suddenly opened his mouth and let out a roar. This was not a human's voice at all. It was like the howl of some ancient monster. In Ding Ming's eyes, Gong Ping had really turned into a monster. His head had turned into the shape of a dragon's head. His entire face was distorted, like a devil's mask formed by black fog and dark clouds. If the Widow of Heavenly Peak and the others had used the Black Dragon Wave, then Gong Ping's current appearance was an enhanced version of the Black Dragon Wave. The terrifying ghost face occupied half the sky, and the dragon's head was about to bite down when it opened its mouth. Ding Ming waved his hand, and a huge curtain of divine light immediately appeared between heaven and earth. The light spikes also seemed to have become particle laser cannons, shooting out countless divine light spikes into the sky. It was like the ground was shooting tens of thousands of arrows into the sky. The scene was extremely majestic. As soon as these light spikes passed through the curtain, their power increased rapidly. The light spikes immediately turned into short swords. A rain of swords swept directly toward the dragon's head. Not only did the dragon's head not show any signs of being weakened, it even opened its black mouth and sucked into short swords. It looked like it was eating a feast. Ding Ming suddenly realized that Gong Ping was also using the new demon energy used by number one. Your attack was actually injecting energy into him. Ding Ming decisively stopped. He raised his head and sneered. Since he liked to absorb so much, I'll let you absorb as much as you want." He put his palms together and paused for a moment. Then he pushed his palms toward the sky. Bang! A pure white cylindrical energy stream with a diameter of 10 meters was shot into the sky. This was not inferior to the orbital bombardment of Starship. The dragon's head swallowed the beam in one gulp. However, at the same time, it was obviously knocked back dozens of meters. The divine light energy was no joke. Even a real orbital bombardment could not compare to it in terms of purity. The dragon's head was very excited when it swallowed the beam, like a hungry wolf pouncing on fresh meat. However, its expression slowly changed. It became difficult and painful because as Ding Meng's diamond origin gradually increased, the energy stream continued to expand. It was like the head of a water wheel being twisted to the limit. It wanted to eat meat, but if it was forced to eat meat when it was full, it was no longer enjoyable. It was going to explode. With a loud bang, the dragon's head exploded into a huge black cloud. However, the explosion was useless. Countless white stars scattered in the sky. The black cloud was instantly purified, and the stars scattered all over the ground. Explosions occurred everywhere in the city. Everywhere the explosion occurred, everything was razed to the ground. On the crystal plate, Gongping finally returned to his original form. He staggered and fell down. Halfway through his fall, he felt a sharp and threatening aura surging from the street. Ding Meng had been waiting for him on the ground. The divine light had already left his wrist and hit his shoulder like a fine thread. Puff! This time, without any surprise, it hit him in the shoulder and directly penetrated his shoulder blade. As he was sent flying, he also stretched out his hand and swung it down. A black thread-like weapon also flew out of his hand. This was not a clever move. It was purely the result of hundreds of years of combat experience. Ding! He could see that the black thread was right in the middle of Ding Meng's forehead. At least, Gongping thought that the black thread had penetrated Ding Meng's brain. It was not until he fell to the ground that he was shocked to find that the black thread did not cause any damage. Ding Meng's forehead was like an iron wall, firmly blocking the black thread. Of course, it was not a real black thread. It was a sharp and narrow black nail surrounded by the energy of the demons. Ding Meng stretched out 2 fingers and slowly removed the black nail. He said expressionlessly, "Did you use this weapon to kill Guan Lin and the doctor?" Gongping's eyes widened. There was a faintly glowing mark of a tiny javelin on the left side of Ding Meng's face. It was not Ding Meng's head that blocked the black nail, but this mark. Now that the mark had left his face, it flew into the air and turned into a divine spear. Gongping did not have time to think. He endured the pain and waved his hands in a circle, slowly wiping them in front of his face. His body changed qualitatively again. His pair of long hands twisted into black, ghostly hands. They were a pair of claws like the strangest, thickest, and ugliest tree roots. "Look at you. You're no longer human. Do you still dream of becoming the ruler of the empire?" Ding Meng said as he threw the divine spear. Just like the probe earlier, the spear expanded halfway through the air. The probe earlier was like a cannonball, but this spear was like a real missile. It was as thick as a towering tree. The flying spear was like a whirlpool. The surrounding buildings were all sucked into it. It was as if even space itself was being twisted and swallowed. Gongping circulated all the energy in his body to the limit. Both of his claws swept out. This pair of demonic claws was indeed a divine technique. They did not block or pincer attack immediately. Instead, they waited for the tip of the spear to pass first. Then, they grabbed the body of the spear. All kinds of tiny tentacles grew out of the claws, entangling the divine spear. This scene was like a divine sword descending from the heavens into the deepest part of the netherworld, vowing to melt and blow up all the evil spirits. However, the demons in the various layers of hell were not willing to accept the divine judgment. They all stretched out their claws in an attempt to entangle the divine sword and stop its momentum. Chapter 830. Gong Ping was doing his best, and so was Ding Ming. The 8 diamond-shaped origins were already operating, and the 10 origins were charging at full speed. There were only 2 colors in the world, black and white, but the white color was dominant. The spear was pushing forward bit by bit, and it was about to reach Gong Ping's face. Gong Ping also knew that this terrible divine energy was the nemesis of mana. He gritted his teeth, opened his eyes, and opened his mouth again. An even more exaggerated scene appeared. His eyes, nose, mouth, and ears spewed out black energy. It looked like mana, but it was similar to the shape of the demon claw. He was like a mutated octopus of demons. Ding Ming nodded. You still have some sense? You did not let the demons completely merge with you. Otherwise, you would be a puppet of the demons. Gong Ping was furious. Ding Ming, you King bastard. You stole my woman and tried to ruin my plan. I will turn you into ashes today. As soon as he finished speaking, he became completely evil. Just like Black Widow, he had completely transformed into an octopus of demons. His body and all of his tentacles were wrapped around the divine light spear. The light of the spear began to weaken, and the energy of the demons gained the upper hand. Ding Ming sighed helplessly. I thought you still had some sense. In the end, you are still willing to be a lackey of the demons. You're hopeless. Ding Ming at the crossroad turned around elegantly. His body shook, and with a wave of his hand, a shining square cloak flew out. This was the divine light cloak that Wen Yang had gifted him. He hadn't had the time to fully digest the transmitted telepathic thoughts and information flow. He only knew part of how to use the cloak, but he still knew the overall characteristics of the cloak. In the divine light weapons, most of the components were offensive in nature. Only a few had auxiliary and defensive effects. This cloak was one of them. As the cloak flew, with the support of Ding Ming's powerful origin essence, it also expanded and turned into the shape of an umbrella. The giant umbrella opened, fell, and then closed. It wrapped around the spear and the octopus from the outside. It sounded like a chainsaw cutting through the flesh of a human body. The pain was unimaginable. Gong Ping's wail was also not a human's voice, as if it came from a faraway world. A familiar scene finally appeared. The demon's octopus gradually turned into a spinning white, circular mirror under the powerful cutting and friction of the divine light energy. Different scenes and images were rapidly changing in the mirror. They were all strange and rare beasts in the universe. They were now desperately crying for help. Back then, the demonic fish entrenched in the widow's body was in such a situation. Ding Ming also knew that these were the spiritual bodies of demons and not their real bodies. They were usually attached to these human masters. Actually, Little Rascal and Little Love had attached themselves to him for the same reason, but the effect was completely different. Demons controlled the negative emotions of humans, drawing out their inner demons and causing them to do some crazy things. On the other hand, Miaoxing's spirit body worshipped holiness. It stimulated the good qualities of humans and encouraged them to work hard and advance bravely. Gradually, the black claw dimmed, and the image of the octopus was purified. Gong Ping, who was in the middle of the pressure, gradually returned to his human form, but the tip of the divine light spear was not recalled. Ding Ming did not intend to let go of the culprit behind all this. Gong Ping directly received the spear tip with his bare hands. When his palms came into contact with the spear tip, his hands were immediately ignited by raging white flames. You damn bastard! Gong Ping yelled in agony. Give me back my woman. Give me back my empire. Give me back my ruler. You're still unrepentant even at this point. Ding Ming sneered. The white bones of Gong Ping's arm were exposed, and the divine light origin flame had already reached his face. However, he was still screaming, Ding Ming, you bastard. If I die, you will die with me. You have to die too. Die, go to hell. Ding Ming shouted angrily. Go to hell and dream about being the ruler. That's where you belong. Whoosh. The fierce divine light origin flame had completely surrounded him. Bastard. Oh no. Gong Ping, who was screaming in agony, was disintegrated bit by bit. He and the demon's spirit bodies were like a blob of ink in a river. They were diluted, washed, and scattered by the pure white water. With a whoosh, the light beam suddenly disappeared. Ding Meng recalled the spear and cape. Gong Ping no longer existed in this world. The famous General Gong Ping had already died more than 100 years ago. He was supposed to be dead. Ding Meng heaved a sigh of relief. Dealing with the leader of the Hidden Front had consumed a lot of energy, but this time it was not as tiring as dealing with the widow. This time, he had used his absolute energy to kill this strong enemy. Of course, he also knew that whether or not he killed Gong Ping did not have much of an effect on the big picture. The Hidden Front scheme had succeeded in the end. The most important thing now was to leave this place as soon as possible. However, when Ding Meng flew into the helipad and rushed into the command module of the Songqing spaceship, he discovered a very serious problem. Although the probe spaceship was intact, an authorization panel popped up on the main control panel. Unable to activate. Unable to activate. Ding Meng poked at it a few times, and a small box popped up on the panel. Please enter your authorization password. With a bang, Ding Meng smashed the panel into powder. That bastard Gong Ping had also tampered with the spaceship. He needed authorization to activate the spaceship's engine. No wonder he was so arrogant before he died that he said, "If I die, you'll die with me." This guy had planned to kill everyone before he left. Even if he could not kill everyone, the space station would explode in space. The chances of the remaining people surviving were very slim. After all, this was the outskirts of the fertile chalk system's giant spiral. The system's voice said, "Countdown, 15 minutes and 30 seconds. What should he do? Ding Meng's telekinetic vision quickly spread out in all directions. There were no escape pods or escape ships in the space station's central system. After scanning the interior of the Songqing spaceship, Ding Meng's eyes lit up. He finally saw the escape pod in the spaceship's ejection module. Although the engine could not be activated, this was not a problem for him. This was because Ding Meng's method was extremely crude. He directly rushed down and smashed the door of the ejection module with a few punches and kicks. Then, he forcefully dragged the escape pod out of the launch tube. His train of thought was very simple. He would drag the escape capsule to the miniature launch pad outside the space station's roof and send it flying into the depths of the vast universe with a punch. He would then summon his wings of light to chase after the escape capsule before entering it. With his current strength, he was not afraid of a vacuum. However, he needed the escape pod mainly to prevent his body from being exposed to a vacuum for too long. The divine light energy could create a protective coating, and the Azure Spirit spell could also reduce the energy consumption to the greatest extent. Of course, Ding Meng also knew that this was very risky. This small torpedo-like escape pod, without any assistance, drifted very slowly in the universe. It was almost like the speed of a turtle. The space station's explosion would definitely not kill him, but if he stayed there for too long, he would basically be finished when the Frogman's army arrived. Therefore, the escape pod slowly drifted into the depths of the universe, at least reducing the chances of encountering the Frogman's army. 10 minutes later, in the dust-filled nebula, the double-H-shaped Hidden Front space station slowly trembled. Its entire body emitted flames, and with a rumbling sound, the huge space station turned into a dazzling red fireball. Debris and cabin parts of various sizes constantly shot out from within the fireball. The fireball continued to burn, explode, and dim until it finally disappeared into the darkness. The Hidden Front and the Chancellor's conspiracy seemed to have met the same end as the space station. In the end, it was buried in the depths of the universe, and perhaps no one would ever know about it. Meanwhile, Ding Meng was lying quietly in the escape pod. He slightly activated the 10 origin points and opened up the smelting space, allowing the divine light essence to slowly flow throughout his body, forming a light-colored coating on his body. The purpose of this was that if the escape pod was attacked, the coating would be able to block the first wave of attack immediately. Of course, Ding Meng did not think that anyone would use a weapon like a railgun to bombard a small escape pod. What he needed to do now was to enter the space of consciousness, enter a state of hibernation, and patiently wait for a turn of events. In the dark space on the other side of Rainforest Plant Number 5, a square-shaped steel spaceship was also heading in this direction. The spaceship was almost one with the darkness, and without advanced reconnaissance radars, it would be impossible to detect it. At this moment, in the bridge, two steel manies, one tall and one short, were standing quietly in front of the window. They seemed to be looking at the bright nebula outside. The tall steel mane was close to 3 meters tall and had blue hair all over his body. The short steel mane was only 2 meters tall and wore a silver-white metal armor. The hair under the armor could not be seen. However, from the way the tall steel mane bowed, he seemed to be very respectful to the short steel mane. "Sir, we have found the person. He is on the way." The short steel mane nodded slightly. "Thank you for your hard work." The tall steel mane quickly bowed. Not at all. It is my honor to serve you, sir." The short steel mane said, "If this is successful, the higher-ups will give you credit. Recently, we have received news that the Cyclone Rainforest system is not peaceful. You can rest for a while." The tall steel mane bowed even lower. His voice was filled with surprise. "Thank you for the reminder, sir. After this trip, I will definitely rest for half a year." "Okay." The short steel mane nodded slowly. His posture was rather dignified. At this moment, a steel-maned soldier ran out of the bridge. "Boss." The tall steel mane was a little impatient. "What is it? Can't you see that I am talking to the sir?" The steel-maned soldier replied carefully, "Sir, boss, we found a human escape pod drifting 62 degrees to the north of us. This was definitely something to be taken seriously. For a human escape pod to appear in such a remote and dark galaxy, the steel-maned soldiers did not dare to ignore it. Perhaps some important person had escaped here." The tall steel mane and the short steel mane looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. The soldier explained, "There is no sign of the Norse Empire or the Holy Grail Federation. It is a nameless escape pod." The tall steel mane said in a deep voice, "Pass down my order. Use a rescue ship to drag the escape pod up." The soldier immediately left. The short steel mane reached out his hand and said, "Sir, do you want to go and take a look?" The short steel mane nodded. "The person I am waiting for is not here yet, and a human is already here. Do not cause any trouble at this time." The tall steel mane had a serious expression. "Yes, sir." Chapter 831. Norse Empire. On the outskirts of Chiose City, a flying car with a military logo slowly landed in front of the Chu family's courtyard. Chu Xiaoqing and Xing Yi had been waiting at the gate for a long time. After the flying car stopped, two soldiers, one old and one young, walked out. Chu Xiaoqing immediately went up to them. "Elder Feng, Roger, you're finally here." "Xiaoqing, Xing Yi, I haven't seen you in a long time." Roger saw that Chu Xiaoqing always had a smile on her face. However, Feng Rufei's expression wasn't very good. Chu Xiaoqing knew that something was wrong and reached out her hand. "Elder Feng, please come in." A group of 4 walked on the simple path of the pavilion in the Chu family side courtyard. The fragrance of flowers was thick and the sun was bright. However, Feng Rufei's expression was very serious. He was silent for a long time until Luo Jie and Chu Xiaoqing finished their greetings. Then he slowly said, "Xiaoqing, I have news that is very unfavorable for you." Chu Xiaoqing's heart sank. "Elder Feng, please speak." Feng Rufei said, "General Gao Yang told me to tell you that from today onwards, your leave has been extended indefinitely." It was actually such a big news. Before Chu Xiaoqing could say anything, Xing Yi couldn't help but ask why. Feng Rufei glanced at her. General Gao Yang's message. It was the decision made by the frontline command this morning. Chu Xiaoqing was very calm. "It doesn't matter if I'm on leave, but what about my fleet?" Feng Rufei's expression softened. "You don't have to worry about that. The higher-ups have decided that young Master Yi will take over your fleet in the future and continue to carry out missions on the front line. Chu Xiaoqing was stunned. The decision made by the higher-ups was without a doubt taking away her actual power. She only had the title of Major General. This sudden news caught her off guard. Xing Yi was a bit angry. Young Master Yi is neither General Gao's subordinate nor General Luo's subordinate. Why are they letting someone else take over Sister Qing's fleet? Her question was actually quite reasonable. General Gao Yang was Chu Xiaoqing's direct superior. Although General Ross was not, Roger had been pursuing Chu Xiaoqing, and General Ross usually took care of her. The two generals were on the same side, and there was no reason for other senior officials to take over. Roger said helplessly, "Little Qing, I heard from my father that the adjustment of the frontline fleet's defenses this time came from a higher level." Star Art was still a little unconvinced, but when he heard this, he was stunned. Congress? Feng Rufei also looked helpless. It was the Chancellor's personal order. Xing Yi was puzzled. Sister Qing has been resting for the past 3 months and hasn't gone anywhere. She hasn't done anything either. If it's really a mistake in command or a failure in the operation, we can accept this kind of punishment, right? Her words immediately made Chu Xiaoqing aware of something. It has been exactly 3 months since Ding Meng disappeared in Xingwu City. Did something happen to Ding Meng? Feng Rufei and Roger did not respond. Chu Xiaoqing knew in her heart that something must have happened to Ding Meng, and it was not a small matter. It probably involved her. Feng Rufei sighed. "Forget it, little Jia. You tell her." Roger said helplessly, "Little Qing, Ding Meng colluded with the Hidden Front in outer space and secretly created the anti-human 5th-generation warriors in outer space, seriously endangering the safety of the Fertile Chalk System's frontline war zone. He is classified as a wanted criminal in the Empire. If you see this person, you don't have to ask for permission. Kill him on the spot." Chu Xiaoqing and Xing Yi were stunned. Roger continued, "Anyone related to Ding Meng in the Empire will have their movements temporarily restricted until the investigation is completed." Chu Xiaoqing said, "When was this news?" Roger said, "Just yesterday, my father issued the latest arrest order according to the orders of the higher-ups. The level is very high, and it cannot be changed." Chu Xiaoqing and Xing Yi's faces were filled with shock and disbelief. Roger comforted her. "Little Qing, don't think too much. Just rest at home for the time being." Chu Xiaoqing quickly said, "Then what about Ding Meng himself?" Roger sighed. "Ding Meng is missing. I had to ask my father many times before he was willing to reveal that Ding Meng went missing in the Fertile Chalk System. No one knows the specific location." Chu Xiaoqing looked at the lawn on the ground with a dazed expression. Roger was a little apologetic. He could tell that this news was a huge blow to Chu Xiaoqing because the person behind her was Ding Meng. This was a huge background because Ding Meng was favored by many important people. Now that such a blunder had happened, she would naturally be affected. Even the entire Chu family would be implicated. "Little Qing," Roger was about to comfort her. At this moment, Chu Xiaoqing's wristband vibrated. The person who was able to contact her personally was not a small figure. The call was quickly connected, but it was not a real-time projection. It was a voice call. The voice was male, and it sounded very relaxed and confident. "Long time no see." Chu Xiaoqing's expression was slightly surprised. "It's you." The male voice laughed. "You are really boring as a major general. I already know the news, but you still haven't received it." "What news?" Chu Xiaoqing asked calmly. The male voice laughed strangely. "The news that the 2 guys beside you told you." Hearing this, the 4 people in the pavilion were all shocked and looked around one after another. "Don't look. I'm not with you." The male voice replied lazily. "I'm at least 100 million kilometers away from you." To be able to see the Chu family's courtyard from such a long distance away, it was obvious that he had seen it from the space station surveillance satellite. However, the Chu family's residence was private, and the official satellite had no right to monitor the privacy of its citizens. It was obvious that this man had hacked into the space station's internal system. Feng Rufei and Roger looked at each other with a trace of shock in their eyes. The other party was so powerful that he had to be a top hacker. Chu Xiaoqing was expressionless. "Why did you suddenly think of looking for me?" The male voice said, "I must be looking for you to ask about Ding Meng's whereabouts." Chu Xiaoqing sighed slightly. "I'm sorry, I don't know about Ding Meng either." The male voice said, "I'm guessing that's your answer, but it doesn't matter. I've asked someone to find out." Chu Xiaoqing laughed. "You even need to ask someone to come personally. Who is this expert?" The male voice said, "Please look up." Everyone looked up and saw a blue bird shuttle appear in the sky. Looking at the direction of the crystal flame, it seemed to be coming toward the Chu family's courtyard. Chu Xiaoqing asked, "May I ask who is coming?" The male voice said, "One is your sister-in-law, and the other is Ding Meng's friend." Sister-in-law? Chu Xiaoqing was a bit puzzled. Her brother's wife was still in Planet Nuashing and had not returned for almost 3 years. Why would she suddenly come back? The male voice said, "Yes. Then what's a friend?" Chu Xiaoqing was a bit confused. "Let me think." The male voice was probably a bit confused. Are people who escaped together in the refugee camp considered friends? Uffed. Chu Xiaoqing was amused by him. "This friend escaped to the Empire?" The male voice laughed. "All right, I won't say any more. They'll be here soon. Take good care of them. I'll thank you in person later." With that, the communication was cut off. At the same time, the shuttle landed at the gate. 2 beautiful women walked out of the car. They were natural beauties, and the one in the lead was tall and slender. Her colorful interstellar fashion made her look fashionable, especially her long legs, which really made one's imagination run wild. Her oval face was even more charming. Looking at her age, she should be very young, and her body had a kind of youthful vitality. The beautiful woman beside the man was slightly older, but her attire was mature and elegant. She wore a black dress that accentuated her exquisite figure. She wore large silver earrings that twinkled and sparkled. Her entire body seemed to be glowing as well. It was a kind of exquisite brilliance. Roger was already prepared. He secretly turned on his wristwatch and compared it with a military database. The results came out quickly, but he was quite surprised. The long-legged beauty's information was no such person, which meant that this woman was not from the Empire. The beauty in the black dress information was Su Xia. "Welcome, Summer Group CEO. Missing person, you guys?" Roger was stunned. Su Xia stepped forward. "You're using your authority to scan citizens without their permission. Don't you think you're being a bit too overbearing?" Her words were rude, but Roger didn't care. "Miss Su, it's been rumored that you died many years ago. I didn't expect you to come back alive." Su Xia shook her head proudly. "I'm a citizen of the Empire. What's wrong with me returning to the Empire?" Roger was stunned. He didn't know how to respond. Chu Xiaoqing's attention wasn't on Su Xia at all. She took the initiative to step forward. "Hello, may I know your name?" The long-legged beauty smiled sweetly. "Hello, Miss Chu. I've heard your name many times. I'm Dai." As she spoke, she turned on her wristwatch. An emerald green logo lit up. The logo was in the shape of 2 hands holding each other in a friendly manner, symbolizing freedom and equality. Roger lost his voice. Federal Empire Special Pass. This kind of pass allowed one to freely enter and leave 2 countries. It had a very high level of certification. Even the military and intelligence agencies couldn't interfere with the activities of the holder without an absolute reason. Dai smiled. "I'm a second-class citizen of the Federation. This time, I came to the Norse Empire to visit Miss Chu." No one present believed this excuse. She was obviously here to ask about Ding Meng. Roger's tone was a bit cold. "Miss Dai, Ding Meng is now a wanted criminal of the Empire. Please be extra careful of your words and actions. Although you have a special pass, the law enforcement agencies of the Empire have never been very reasonable." Dai, he was very good at dealing with outsiders. She smiled generously. "Thank you for the reminder, but it's okay because I'm Ding Meng's wife." As soon as she said this, Roger and the others were stunned. "You're really brave. When you mention Ding Meng, people avoid you like the plague, but you're brave enough to introduce yourself. Most importantly, your identity is too scary." Aren't you afraid that the law enforcement agencies will come looking for you? Chu Xiaoqing was slightly stunned. Only then did she understand the man's explanation. This was his sister-in-law. For Chu Xiaoqing, Ding Meng deserved to be called Big Brother. Since it was his sister-in-law, it was necessary to be polite. She smiled sweetly. "Oh, it's my sister-in-law. Please come in and let me be the host." "Wait." Roger decisively stopped her. "Xiaoqing, this is a special time. I don't think it's appropriate to let an outsider in." Chapter 832. Luo Jie's reminder was not without reason. Because Ding Meng was Chu Xiaoqing's friend, he had already been grounded by the military. Now that you're receiving Ding Meng's wife, aren't you putting more suspicion on yourself? Su Xia said decisively. "Haha, if Miss Chu's sister-in-law becomes an outsider in your mouth, then what are you?" She almost said the word thing, but how could Luo Jie not understand? He was a bit angry. "All right, since Miss Dai is Madame Ding, then who are you?" Su Xia flipped her hair arrogantly. "Me? Ding Meng is my big brother. I'm just his follower. Are you satisfied with this answer?" Dai Yi also explained, "Sister Xia is also my big sister and my husband's right-hand woman. Is there a problem?" Su Xia smiled. "Luckily, only Miss Chu's sister-in-law came this time. If second sister-in-law and third sister-in-law came, would you ask me everything?" "You." Luo Jie was a bit speechless. The two women's rhythm was very good. He couldn't interrupt them at all. Chu Xiaoqing was amused. "How many wives does Ding Meng have?" "Not many, only 4. Dai Yi's face was as calm as the wind and clouds. There was nothing strange about it, as if he felt that this was normal. He couldn't help but smile. "Ding Meng really has good luck with women. Sister-in-law, you're so beautiful." Dai Yi replied politely. "Miss Xing, you're too polite. Ding Meng not only mentioned you many times, but the captain and the others are also very grateful to you. You helped the refugees of Green Arrow more than once." Luo Jie was a bit dizzy. He was also surprised by Dai Yi's beauty. This woman was not inferior to Chu Xiaoqing. In some aspects, she was even more outstanding. For example, her legs. As long as you looked at them, it was hard to look away. Even if you looked away, the illusion in front of you would still be those legs. Then, he was completely shocked. He could not see through Dai Yi's depths at all. Following that, his gaze landed on Su Xia, who was emitting a faint aura. This was the aura of a light speed-type war elder. But how could an ordinary war elder's aura be so pure and profound? This was far from being as simple as a war elder. He was most likely a war monarch or even a war saint. Ding Meng's followers were all battle saints? This was King heaven-defying. If even the attendants were like this, there was no need to talk about the official wife. It was normal that he couldn't see through her. His guess was correct. In the base of planet V9, while the Divine Arrow spaceship was being modified, a large group of people were quietly lying in the sensing cabin with the help of the energy crystals, receiving the baptism of the divine light essence. The red crystals that Star General Mio had preserved were a huge amount of wealth. They were the wealth of origin ability users. Currently, other than Eisendel, Ding Meng's wives and followers were all absorbing the energy, and their strength was increasing by leaps and bounds. Dai Yi was the first person to start cultivating and had long reached the war saint level. This time, the Empire's arrest warrant would naturally alarm Little Rascal and the others. After Little Rascal and Xinjia discussed it carefully, they decided to send Dai Yi and Su Xia to planet TT-12. Su Xia was a citizen of the Empire, so it was convenient for her to move around here. Dai Yi was good at dealing with people head-on, so she was the best candidate for this trip. Originally, Lan Bing and Jun Ling wanted to come, but they were all rejected by Xinjia. Lan Bing was good at playing dirty, so it was not suitable for her to deal with the upper echelons of the military. As for Jun Ling, her straightforward style of fighting was directly dissuaded by Xiao AI. You should focus on your cultivation. When you surpass the war god level, you can kill at will. Junling actually listened to this suggestion. Other than Ding Ming, the straightforward girl in the base did not submit to anyone except Xiao AI. Soon, Chu Xiaoqing and Dai Yi walked side by side into the Chu family's courtyard. Seeing these women talking and laughing, they did not feel distant at all. It did not seem like they were meeting for the first time. Even after Chu Xiaoqing and the others entered, Roger still seemed to be in a daze. He turned to look at Feng Rufei. Elder Feng, look at them. Isn't Xiaoqing a little too careless? Feng Rufei did not speak from beginning to end. Only now did he slowly sigh. This matter is a little strange. This old man who had lived for more than 100 years was always much smarter than a young man like Roger. When faced with the sudden visit of Dai Yi and Su Xia, he immediately sensed the subtle meaning behind this. Roger's perception was also quite high. He suddenly thought of many deeper things that he had not thought about carefully. Dai Yi and Su Xia had come to the Empire. What did this prove? As for those top figures, they often did not represent a single person, but the team and power behind them. Dai Yi and Su Xia were Ding Meng's people. They chose to enter the Empire openly. Either they were too arrogant, or they had the confidence to do so. Roger was obviously more inclined to the latter. Ding Meng was such a powerful top figure. The people who followed him were definitely not good-for-nothings. Dai Yi's identity was Ding Meng's legal wife, which was enough to show that Ding Meng's people attached great importance to this matter. This kind of importance had two hidden meanings. First, it was normal to question the arrest order of the Empire's military. No wife would be happy if her husband was treated as a criminal. Second, the process and results of the investigation of the matter of the recreated soldiers. Ding Meng was likely to be wrongly accused. If he was wrongly accused, it proved that the higher-ups of the military were lying. Thinking of this, Roger showed an incredulous expression. Mr. Feng, could it be that the higher-ups? Feng Rufei's face was very ugly. It's hard to tell who is right and who is wrong at the moment. There are some words that can't be said by us. Roger immediately understood. Dai Yi and Su Xia visited the Chu family because they thought that Ding Meng was wrongly accused and Chu Xiaoqing was implicated. Ding Meng's people not only wanted to show their attitude, but also supported the Chu family. No matter who wanted to take this opportunity to suppress the Chu family, they would have to ask these two women. Roger suddenly showed a wry smile. He had secretly checked these two people just now. For him, they were unfathomable existences. Fortunately, they did not release their real aura. If they really suppressed him, he would have fainted. Feng Rufei also smiled wryly. In fact, he had not said anything because he was shocked by the strength of these two people. For a moment, he felt that he was old and could not keep up with this era. In today's Federal Empire, there were too many monsters in the younger generation. In fact, what he wanted to say most was that he also thought that Ding Meng was wrongly accused. This was because, based on his understanding of Ding Meng could never be a mercenary of the Hidden Front. When one's strength reached Ding Meng's level, what could he not have? Only crazy people would seek refuge with the underground forces. It was purely superfluous. Let's go, Feng Rufei said. With the arrival of these two people, we don't need to look after planet TT-12 in short term. Miss Chu is a person with great fortune. Heaven helps the worthy. Okay. Although Roger was a little reluctant, he still walked toward the flying car. In the living room on the first floor of the Chu family's villa, exquisite tea and drinks had been placed. Since Dai Yi had come, Chu Xiaoqing naturally would not neglect him. For something like this to happen, I find it a little hard to understand. Chu Xiaoqing spread her hands helplessly, but from the bottom of my heart, I choose to believe in Ding Meng. I understand Ding Meng's character. Dai Yi also held Ding Meng's friend in high regard. Yao Manru had mentioned to him more than once that Miss Chu and Star Art often provided large amounts of daily necessities for planet KV-303. Xiao, Xiao Wei, and the others were all filled with gratitude and admiration for this young general of the Empire. The last time we located Ding Meng's position was in Xingwu City, Star Art explained. Su Xia immediately said, the last time we located him was in the nebula obstruction zone outside the fertile chalk star system. From then on, we lost contact with him. Ding Ming had more than one wristwatch on him. He had all the products of the Empire Federation and the directional chip provided by the Divine Aerospace Ship. However, since the Divine Aerospace Ship could not find him, there were only two explanations. Either he was in a special environment that blocked signals, or Ding Ming deliberately turned off the wristwatch and went to a place very far away. This distance was at least light years away. Chu Xiaoqing said, "The only thing that quantum detectors can't detect in the periphery of the Great Star System is the Rainforest Star System inside. Even the frontline exploration fleets don't dare to rashly enter it." Dai glanced at Su Xia, who nodded. "That's possible. Ding Ming and I escaped from Planet 1. Chu Xiaoqing smiled bitterly. "Miss Dai, the military has taken away my command of the fleet. If you want to go there, I can't do anything about it." Dai comforted her. "Miss Chu, you don't have to blame yourself. We're here as guests, and we really are. I don't plan to wander around." This time, it was Chu Xiaoqing and Star Art's turn to be stunned. What was the meaning of this? Of course, they didn't know that Dai, and Su Xia were only one of the forces sent by Exine Jie. This was just a distraction to attract the attention of the Empire. The other forces had already started moving. At this moment, in the depths of space, the large black spaceship of the Steel Main Nation was drifting quietly. Not far from it, a quaint transport ship slowly entered the port. Behind the transport ship, there was a search and rescue boat. It already picked up the rescue capsule and followed the transport ship into the interior of the main spaceship. In the passage outside the command hall, the Steel Main soldier ran over again. Sir, we've picked up the people. We've also captured the human rescue capsule." The short Steel Main soldier was excited. "Send it to the command cabin." "Yes, sir." The Steel Main soldier turned around excitedly. Less than 2 minutes after the soldier left, the control panels in the command hall suddenly started to vibrate. Many short Steel Main soldiers started to get busy. This was the warning signal of the Steel Main spaceship. "What's going on?" The tall man immediately rushed to the control panel. Someone on the side reported, "Boss, we've discovered a large number of flying units on the route we set in advance. From the radar, it should be the fleet of the Frogmen." The tall man and the short man's face froze. Why would the Frogmen fleet appear here? This was bad. "Can you get the signal? Show me the image," the tall man shouted. Chapter 833. Before the signal was received, 2 rows of Steel Main soldiers surrounded a shorter Steel Main person and walked in from the main passage. This dwarf was really short, about the same height as Ding Ming. However, when the short man saw the dwarf, he quickly went up to him and asked respectfully, "Are you okay?" The dwarf's voice was very soft, as if he was weak. I'm fine." The short man's face darkened. "You've been wronged." The dwarf said, "It's okay. Didn't I meet up with you now?" The short man said solemnly, "Don't worry. I will do my best to escort you back." The dwarf said, "Thank you." The short man said seriously, "You don't have to say that to me." The dwarf said, "I know." At this time, a group of soldiers dragged the escape pod in with steel forks. The Steel Main people had a deep understanding of all kinds of metals. The tall man could tell that the escape pod was made of extraordinary material and could be sold for a good price. Just when he was deciding whether to turn it on or not, the main control panel suddenly made a ping sound, and the real-time image provided by the reconnaissance radar appeared. Everyone turned their heads and saw a mighty fleet of frogs approaching them in the dark space. There were no less than 100 ships in this fleet, and they were arranged neatly and orderly, like a series of mutated frogs. Needless to say, this was definitely a regular fleet of the military, not some random combination. His subordinate reported, "Boss, the enemy has sent a message. They claim to be the vanguard of Interstellar Fleet 202 and are entering the rainforest. They want us to cooperate with the inspection." The tall man immediately turned around and looked at the short man. The short man pondered and ordered decisively, We can't make any mistakes at this time. Just follow the orders of the frogs. Everyone bear with it. We'll be fine once we get through it. He had no choice but to give this order. The Steel Main Empire was dependent on the frogs, and the Byron star system was actually quite small. If a country wasn't strong, then its citizens wouldn't be strong either. Therefore, the Steel Main people were often discriminated against by the frogs in outer space. Steel Main spaceships had no choice but to comply with requests to enter the port for inspection. The inspection wasn't a real inspection. It was nothing more than passing merchant ships and civilian ships. The frogmen would plunder everything. To put it bluntly, without their status as a frogman army, they were essentially no different from interstellar pirates. It was obviously not the first time the tall man had experienced this, but since the short man had given the order, there was nothing he could do. He could only wait quietly because he knew that the frogs would soon surge around the spaceships. 20 minutes later, a series of heavy yet orderly footsteps came from the main passage. The sound was like a hammer hitting a steel plate, very sonorous and powerful. A group of about 40 frogmen walked into the command hall with a dignified aura. The general characteristic of the frogs was that no matter how they changed their appearance, they were still frogs. However, they had obviously evolved many times and could walk upright. Their thick thighs were the foundation of the frogs. A normal frogman's thigh was almost 2 meters tall when they stood up, which was about the same height as the Steel Main people. Therefore, the Steel Main people on the spaceship looked like dwarfs in front of the frogs. The lower abdomen of the frogs was huge, and the belly was the most flexible part. Usually, it was easy to be attacked, and it was difficult to recover after the body was damaged. Therefore, the frogs were replaced with advanced biotechnology combined with mechanical metals. Therefore, the frogs looked like real reborn warriors, half biological and half mechanical. The more heavily injured a frogman was, the more metal plates, coil components, and armor they wore. This was the symbol of the honor of the frogman. A soldier that had been through hundreds of battles basically only had his head and limbs left. The rest was replaced by metal machines. The most distinctive feature of the frogs was their eyes, which were as thick as footballs. Their eyesight was very strong. The stronger they were, the bigger their eyes and the different colors. It was the same principle as the hair of the Steel Main people, which represented their status. At this moment, the leader of the frogs swaggered forward and spoke from his abdomen. Who is the person in charge of this spaceship? Although the tall frogs were 3 meters tall, they looked like mice in front of the frogs. The tall frogs immediately smiled and said, "Sir, I am." Half of the frog's chest was made of various metals, but their eyes were slightly red. It seemed like they were general-level frogs. Name. The general was very impatient. The tall frogs did not dare to be slow. Lien Luo. As soon as he answered, a frog immediately reached over with a glowing metal light stick. It was probably something like a scanner. The frogs poked and tapped on Lien Luo's body. After a while, the frogs nodded and said, there's no mark. He is an unregistered resident. Unregistered residents were people of the Steel Main race who did illegal business in space. They were typical human traffickers. Lien Luo's expression changed instantly. His identity as an unregistered resident was exposed. Even if he did not die, he would be skin alive. The general turned his head and said, "Have you searched everything?" The frogs continued to nod. "Boss, we have searched everything. There is nothing valuable. The cargo hold is full of metal trash that we don't want." The general was a little unhappy. He turned his head and looked at Lien Luo. "You are an unregistered resident. Why did you come to the Rainforest Star region with such a large cargo ship? What are you doing? Exploring? Or catching people?" The frog's eyes were especially scary. If one stared at them for too long, they would hallucinate. Lien Luo did not dare to raise his head. He laughed dryly and said, "Sir, we are just trying to make a living. Please be magnanimous." Even he did not believe what he said. This black ship was a standard large transport ship. Its facilities were very outdated. However, anyone with a little knowledge of navigation would know that the more stupid the ship was, the more expensive it was to maintain. If they really did not find anything in outer space, everyone on the ship would lose everything. Obviously, the general was not that easy to fool. His eyes stopped on the short man. The short man was indeed different from the other Steel Mane people here, because he was wearing a combat suit. Although the Steel Mane race valued their hair, those who were really rich often wore clothes. Only the lower-class people would run around naked. Those who were slightly better off would have metal underpants. "You come here." The general beckoned with his finger. The short man had no choice but to go forward. "Take off your clothes," the general said coldly. It seemed like a small action, but it was actually very hard for the Steel Mane people to accept because wearing a combat suit meant that one had a certain social status. The frogs wanted you to take off your combat suit to see the color of your hair and determine how dangerous you were. In fact, it was a joke because you would be laughed at by the other Steel Mane people in the future. It was an unacceptable insult. As expected, the short man did not move or answer. He just stood there quietly. The general said angrily, "Are you deaf? Can't you hear what I said?" The short man was expressionless. Slap. The general's claws slapped the short man's face. The claws of this kind of giant frog were comparable to steel thorns. The short man was sent flying in an instant, smashing several control panels in succession. Finally, he smashed into a steel stool and lay there motionless. It seemed that he had fainted. The general was very angry at first, but he was stunned. "Bah, useless trash. Wearing clothes and pretending to be an expert. Can't even take a slap from me. What piece of trash. An unregistered citizen is an unregistered citizen. So boring." If there really was an expert present, they would have realized that the short man was definitely not a piece of trash. He was deliberately sent flying by the general. On the contrary, the short man's strength was not below Lien Luo's, but the general was no longer interested in him. There was another noise at the gate. 2 soldiers came in with an escape pod. "Boss, we found this." The general smiled. "Huh, I thought you really didn't have anything. Turns out you salvaged a human escape pod." Lien Luo was depressed. From afar, the imperial city didn't look like much, but when Ding Ming reached the peak, he realized that the temple was just a cover. This was clearly the structure of a large starship. The temple was only the reconnaissance cabin at the top. The palace was the command hall, the treasury was the storage cabin, and the connecting cabin was the city gate. It was a large starship embedded inside the building. It could only be said that the material of this starship was much better than the starships of other countries. The funeral palace felt like a restaurant. There were many seats here, and in the center was the altar. Ding Ming and the others attracted the attention of dozens of people as soon as they came in. These people were obviously important members of the royal family. It could be seen from their gorgeous clothes. However, everyone's attention was on Little White. Little White's skin color was a heresy in the empire. Many people were whispering. With Ding Ming's perception, he heard everything clearly. Is that the 4th son of Ming Li and his wife? Look at his white hair. Could it be that he mutated due to pollution? I heard that the 4th son is an illegitimate child. Is he also here to get a share of the inheritance? Shoo, lower your voice. Don't talk nonsense in this kind of place. Ding Ming thought that Little White was an illegitimate child. No wonder he was abandoned when he was born. There was a big steel bed on the altar. 2 people were lying side by side on it with their eyes closed. They were Little White's parents, Ming Li and his wife. In Ding Ming's eyes, although most of the Steel Mane people looked the same, this couple was obviously different from ordinary people. They were dressed like the ancient royal clothes. They were square, graceful, and luxurious. There were all kinds of jewelry on them, but they were all made of metal. Next was their hair and skin color. Their skin was purple. They were typical members of the royal family. Ming Li and his wife were lying quietly in a pile of colorful metal funerary objects. They looked calm and peaceful. Little White did not have any impression of his parents. He just followed the tradition and bowed 3 times to show filial piety. Then, Little White returned to the first row of seats below the altar. Ding Ming stood behind him. The other Steel main royal family members did not have any objections because Jean Feng had already explained that this was the follower of His Highness the Fourth Prince. After Little White finished bowing, an old man with purple and black hair walked up the altar. He was the royal family's priest. He was responsible for presiding over farewell ceremonies. People like him were very respected in the empire. After the priest walked up the altar, he scanned the crowd and slowly said, "Friends and family of Ming Li and his wife, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to send these 2 respected lords off.